a chance to be one of the Cardinals' heroes tonight.
Got him looking, strike three. Swing and a miss. He struck him out. Back-to-back strikeouts for Emilio Pagan, and there's 2 outs, and the bases are still loaded.
And now the Cardinals' final hope will be Matt Carpenter.
Struck him out. Pagan with the punch out, and the Reds get the win. They blank the Cardinals, surviving a scary 9th. The Reds have won 7 of 9, and they take down their rival in St. Louis.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. That's what it sounded like last night on both Bally Sports Midwest and the Reds TV network as the Cardinals, Alex, went into the bottom of the 9th inning, down 3-0. They load him up with nobody out. Walker, Sajacy, and then a pinch hitter who ended up being Matt Carpenter coming up to the plate. You think, okay, they'll at least get a run out of this. One,
or
just
at least
one.
make contact.
Just somebody walk. Take one for the team. Get hit by a pitch.
Don't swing.
Yeah, do what you did in the Brewers series.
Do something in this spot, please. They didn't. Strikeout into the game, 3-0. They lose that one. They've lost 3 of their last 4. They are now effectively eliminated from the postseason.
Well,
now,
there's no X next to their name.
Mathematically, still
We're not the
alive.
Angels.
If they went 17-1 the rest of the way, and the teams that are ahead of them went below 500 the rest of the way, you make the playoffs.
I've seen it happen.
So that's good.
Yeah.
Got that going
How
for
about
you.
them Redbirds?
T-Bone is still living in what happened, 3 years ago? 17-game win streak,
I
huh?
think they were back in the playoff picture this time.
That's actually a really great example. You essentially need to recreate what you did in that 17-game winning streak.
I saw it.
T-Bone, you got the optimism,
Yeah.
baby. Let's go. All right.
Nobody's going to want to play this team once you get into the playoffs riding on into that 18-game winning streak. Dude, good luck.
World Series bound.
Cardinals are going to be real hot at
This
that
year we
point.
actually have pitching behind our ace.
Here's the problem. That might not guarantee you, though.
Do we?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Okay.
I mean, it's not a Lester and Hap.
That's true.
Petty,
Do we have a
got
Quintana, though?
Gibson. That wasn't 3 years ago.
Oh, that was
That was 2 years ago.
Oh,
3 years ago, they had a rough rotation.
3 years ago. We were like, yeah, this could work.
So yeah, Cardinals lose last night 3-0, and moral of the story, they're done. It's over. They're going to tell you they're not, but they are. It ended with a thud once again. Who could have seen this one coming? And Alex, I got to tell you, I just didn't really care last night.
What?
It's like,
come on, man.
I am actually kind of curious. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. That's where the Air Comfort Service text line is. The YouTube chat, youtube.com/101ESPNSTL is the place to go for the graveyard chat. Do you guys care? Are you guys still watching, living and dying on every pitch? I would imagine there was a decent number of people that were frustrated by the way they finished that one out last night. But like T-Bone mentioned it during our pre-show meeting, people were frustrated on social media about what Ollie said after the game about the offense not coming through.
I'm surprised people were sticking around listening to what Ollie had to say post-game.
I think it was just like they saw it on social media.
Oh, okay. Get angry at social media.
I can't imagine caring at this point.
Yeah.
It does nothing for me, but it's a really great fan base, and people are super connected to the team, even despite their struggles. So I'm guessing there's still some people that care, but I don't know. I don't have it.
I think I don't know if it's caring about the outcome of the game. I think it's the way that the game ended. That's the part that probably is the most important. Like I like to call last night the past, present, and future, because the past of Matt Carpenter, the present of Jordan Walker, and the future of Sajacy all struck out with runners in scoring position. And if that doesn't get you frustrated, I don't know what will, because those are the guys you're hoping to build off of. Maybe not so much Carpenter, but I would assume that's where the frustration comes from, that once again, you take on that lethal Cincinnati Reds team and you cannot muster up any type of offense to score against that lethal pitching staff that they have.
Lethal.
That's where I guess
That's a pitcher that I'd never heard of before yesterday.
That's
why we couldn't hit him.
well,
No scouting
and lethal bullpen too, I might add. You know, that guy goes out there and walks guy, gives up 2 hits, and then boom, boom, boom.
Emilio Pagan.
Ends
Wanted
it-
him in the offseason.
ends it
T-Bone
real
3
quick.
member.
Rhett Louder.
Who?
That's who started last
Oh.
night.
He had long. Yeah, that was about it. All you know from that's a guy.
Alex's analysis. He had long hair. that was it. That's all he had.
He wasn't wrong.
I mean, was I wrong?
Weird throwing motion. Like all of it was kind of
once again
strange. Just long hair.
Guy the Cardinals have never seen before, and it's like, well, he's got long hair. This guy's going to go throw the heat and probably give him up.
Like the classic junk lefty they'd always struggle against.
I would imagine the way that they're losing is the part that frustrates you, but at this point, I don't care. Like it's like I've calloused over from what this season is and say, cool, let's see what they look like in 2025.
Yeah, I I didn't care how that game ended. Like, if they hit a grand slam, Walker hits a grand slam, walks the game off, wouldn't have cared. They strike out 3 times and lose the game, don't score a run, wouldn't have cared. I actually get more frustrated, not by how that game ended, but every night when my phone dings and I go, oh, notification, I look and it's Cardinals game about to start, and I go, ah, crap, I got to turn that on?
Why do I get those from Apple TV now, guys?
By
I don't know how to turn it off.
Why not?
Did you get the notification about Sajayce's debut with his first at-bat? It's like star prospect. It's like star
prospect.
Who'd they bring in?
Well, he technically was, right?
And this is no shot against Sajayce. Like, I was excited to see him. And by the way, I can't help but notice the comparison between he and young Matt Carpenter.
Yeah.
Look freaking
Yeah, they looked very similar when they struck out.
Okay.
high fastball up the zone. Yeah, I was just like old man.
Skinny, like no batting gloves, the stance, everything about him. I was like, dude, I've seen that before.
Boy.
Where have I recognized
Boy, our
this?
breakdown
Felt
today.
like Leo watching the screen. I was like, wait. I've
Boy,
seen that.
our breakdown today. Long hair, skinny at the plate. This is what Cardinals breakdown has come to, ladies and gentlemen. This tells you we're done with the season.
All right, so somebody on the text line said, guys, I would rather hear about the Cardinals' odds to get a top 5 pick than I would the Cardinals' odds to get into the playoffs. I can do that for you. Absolutely.
Every day's a
Happy to do it.
holiday. Hit me with it.
All right, so there are 2 teams that are ineligible to get into the top 10 of the draft odds, right? It's the Chicago White Sox and the Oakland Athletics. They've been too bad, too long, and so they're ineligible. So keep that in mind. They immediately go back to the back.
Yes,
Back
better
to the
chance.
back. The Cardinals right now, if you want to get into the top 5, and that's really all that's realistic, top 4 are basically determined. Colorado, Miami, the Angels, and the Washington Nationals. They're too far ahead. You just can't get there.
It's a lottery, man.
Yeah, let us dream. But
It's a lottery.
in terms of the odds, you can't get into the top 4. 5th is Toronto. It's amazing. They are 4 games up or down. I don't know how you want to look at this from the Cardinals right now. That is very much in play for this team. They could do that, boys. We just got to catch up to quite a few teams. There's 7 teams right now between the Cardinals and the Toronto Blue Jays. But, hey, man, if they finish top 6 or 7, you got like a 5% chance of getting the number 1 pick.
You know what I think it's time for? I think it's time to double dip for the rest of this season. Not only do you go for that 4th best odds or 5th best odds, you send all the guys down to AAA and go for a AAA championship.
Yeah.
Who could the Cardinals remove from their roster right now that would help you lose more games? Is it just Sonny Gray?
Well, I mean,
Who else is like really helping you right now?
well,
Like they're too
off-
good for you to get the pick that we're
Well,
looking
the
for.
Helsley.
offense can stay intact.
Yeah, Helsley's probably got a barky elbow.
Yeah.
Helsley,
Oh, for
Palante,
sure.
and Gray. And then just roll
Oh,
it
yeah.
I
out
don't
there.
think Palante is good enough right now to really put into this equation. He's walked 5 guys in each of his last 2 starts, and I think he should continue to be in your starting rotation. I want him to work through this.
This conversation's got me really thinking about what I say yesterday. And you know what? I want Michaelis to stay in the rotation.
Those previous starts, though, for Palante, man, just imagine you pluck him out and put Lance Lynn and Miles Michaelis just rolling out there consistently.
I think Donovan needs to hit the IL with a toe infection.
Man,
Right now, Goldschmidt, it's wild to be saying that.
Goldie has an OPS of 957 this month.
Yeah.
Newfar's been good this month, too. Get him out of line.
Yeah.
Yeah, Newt's got an OPS over 1,000. You know who else has been really good is Pedro Pajes. Now it's like
Wow.
2 hits, and they went somehow out of the park.
You probably should have left him at the plate then last night rather than Matt Carpenter.
I mean, there was a case.
There's a case for the catcher to go out there and hit at that spot.
You know who should definitely be going out there every day right now if you want a better pick is
Jose!
Alec Burleson.
Jordan Walker.
I thought
Alec
you were gonna go
Burleson's
Jose
batting
Fermin.
100 in the month of September with 0 extra base hits.
Maybe that's what we should do. Let's put together.
Really hit quite a wall.
Let's play the lineup game, but we'll call it the lottery lineup game. And we put it together. Like Fermin leading off.
Yes.
Would
Walker
he be
hitting
the
in the
leadoff
3
hitter
hole.
in this scenario?
Absolutely,
Oh,
he would
yeah.
be the leadoff hitter.
I don't know, man.
I mean, that
Siani's
400
really
OPS.
struggled since he's returned from the IL.
Well, that's good, though, because they sent Victor Scott down. And so they said, well, let's just keep Siani in there. Jordan Walker hitting in the 2 hole, obviously.
Oh, that's a good one.
Pedro Pajes hitting in
too
the 3
good.
spot.
Get
Too
him down.
good?
Get him down.
Okay, put him down.
Get him down.
So JC in the 3 hole.
I think Carp.
Yeah, I'll hit him clean up.
Yeah, but Carp's got that, like, old man magic. They could still
No,
pull
that's
out every
fair.
once in a while. Probably Burleson for how he's hitting right now. Put him in the 3 spot.
Yeah, that's probably smart.
And then clean
Left,
up,
right, left,
obviously.
right, Gotta get the matchups.
Clean up, obviously. is
No,
you got to
we-
call
we-
Brandon Crawford back and say, hey, man, we need you.
We don't
I'm actually
want the
surprised nobody
matchups.
picked him up.
What?
Are you?
Call up Gorman. Call up Gorman. Put him in the
No,
cleanup
he's
spot.
hitting, man. He's hitting.
He's hitting in AAA.
Yeah, come on.
Come on, man.
no.
We've seen this before, right? He hits in AAA. He's got to be ready.
Somebody said, just put Carpenter at leadoff for the nostalgia.
Well, you should definitely play him at third base, too.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely
really
play him at third base. See if Jose Martinez is available to take over first.
Puts a JC at short, Carp at third, and Gorman at second with... What's your worst option at first base right now?
Von Herrera?
No, I mean, come on, big boy.
Lucan Baker.
Lucan.
Dude, that is not a bad option. He's hitting.
Yeah.
I know, but...
Oh, defensively, you mean? A lot of errors? Okay. And then the outfield, Burley in center, Michael Ciani playing one of the corners, and Jordan Walker in left.
I think we could lose a lot of games this way.
I think we're going for Ethan Holiday if we do that lottery lineup.
Heating up for Holiday. That's what we're going to call it.
Yeah, I like that.
All right,
The heat is on. The heat is on.
So the Cardinals
Everybody's back
lost
to Whitey
last
Paul.
night. They are now 4 games back of the number 5 spot in the lottery odds. That's what we're going to be tracking now. We're no longer tracking the playoffs. They're effectively eliminated. Not mathematically, but
Hail Mary for Holiday.
effectively. They've lost 3 of their last 4. They've scored 1, 2, 4, and 0 runs in those games. It's not.
They're
good,
also
boys.
they're
Gross.
also 2-5 on the season series against the Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah, you said they have 0 winning records against this National League Central this year.
Now you still have
It's a
one
deep
more series
division.
against the Pirates, so the Pirates you have the chance to, but you're 2-5 against the Reds, you're 5-8 against the Brewers, and you're 7-7 against the Cubs. You are not better than 500 against
We
one
are
NL
playing
Central
like
team.
in the AL East of the National League, you know?
But good thing this team went
More
on
or
that.
less.
Yeah.
Good thing this team went on that torrid pace against those top teams that we all
remember
bought
that,
into.
Like post Mother's Day, Ollie gets thrown out in Milwaukee, and then whoa, they're back.
What was the
Put on the conductor?
No, we threw.
I don't know where it is, actually.
We took it in the. Remember, we did our draft lottery out of it when BK got the first overall pick. We thought
yeah.
that was pretty poetic.
hat's gone?
How poetic.
it's in there.
Yeah, it's in there.
You guys
Writer's
got
room.
rid of my hat?
Oh, because you really wanted it.
I thought we were gonna do a ceremony with it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's in the corner. Okay, we got it. There we go. Here we go. All right.
Oh. Shout out
Back
to
on,
Mike
ladies and
Ryder for
gentlemen.
the pass.
We are the conductor of the Cardinals lottery odds train.
Yeah, well,
Take
the
that
last
off.
time you put
You
the
can.
conductor hat on, you crashed that train pretty quick. So maybe we should
Is it better or worse if I could crash the lottery odds train?
probably bad
don't know,
because then
man.
they're going to get like the 10th overall pick.
Well, they're back in action
Oh, they're gonna
tonight.
pull a Blues.
Yeah,
Oh, great.
they'll go on a run the last 10 games of the season.
Lance Lynn is back on the mound.
That helped.
And if you heard Kyle Gibson on the morning show earlier today, he said he's pulling out a changeup in his live batting practice. He's throwing something other than a fastball. So
Who,
we'll
Gibson?
see if he makes
Lance.
We'll see if he makes that debut tonight.
What do you got, Palante?
You know, you got
5 walks.
Steven Matz,
Lynn
who's
won't
now
do that.
throwing a curveball that's effective, and Lance Lynn, who maybe will throw something other than a fastball tonight. We'll see.
This has been a pretty negative segment, guys.
I've had fun.
Glad I'm not going to the ballpark tonight.
Yeah, unfortunately, one of us is.
Alex is looking like a server at a 3-star Italian restaurant, and he'll be down there at the ballpark talking to Ollie pregame.
Oh, man, at least the hair's giving me at least a bump up to 4-star.
Nah, man.
You put an apron on, I'm at least a 4-star restaurant.
think?
Yeah, come on.
I think you need some white gloves.
I'm a waiter, not a chef. Come on.
All right, he's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll dive into some NFL quick hitters. But next, the Cardinals are once again
them
speaking out of
again?
both sides of their mouth. This was a fun segment. Next segment, probably not going to be so much fun. We'll talk about it next on 101 ESPN. All right, so we got to talk about it. The Cardinals made a decision yesterday to send Victor Scott down. We didn't know about that as we were doing the show. All we knew is that Thomas Ajacey was coming up. And so when we talked to Katie Wu yesterday, our Cardinals insider for The Athletic, you could hear our conversation with her. 101ESPN.com, the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
When we talked to her, it was like, okay, what's Thomas Ajacey's role going to be? We're all very excited. You know, this top prospect's coming up for the Cardinals. As T-Bone said, I got an alert last night. Hey, star prospect for the Cardinals making his debut.
Stud.
It's all very exciting stuff. And then you see that the corresponding move is to send down Victor Scott. And I was like, what?
Star prospect sent down.
It's not a star prospect.
No.
Am I mistaken? I thought last week the Cardinals were doing the hard sell on, well, he needs to be up here because of the instruction that he's going to get with our major league coaching staff.
The Hall of Famer himself.
He's working with Willie McGee every day in the outfields. He's getting these jumps right. He's going to be working on his base running where he's kind of timing things out. All of this stuff is just... You can't get this kind of instruction down in the minor league, so he's got to be here, even though we are literally never going to be starting him ever again. But he's got to be here because he's got to get this great instruction from our coaching staff. Whether I agree with that or not important. At least there's a plan in place, and I can live with it if there's a plan in place. When you tell me the plan, and then 1 week later, you immediately reverse course on that plan. If it happens once, I'm like, that was a weird week, wasn't it, guys?
That wasn't fair.
If it happens twice, I'm like, man, I think that happened before. If it happens like 6 times over the course of an 18-month stretch, which has been the case for the Cardinals over the last couple of years, you guys remember when Wilson Contreras was going to be a catcher, and then he was going to be a DH, and then he was going to be an outfielder, and then he went back to being a DH, and then in like a week went back to being the catcher?
Oh, yeah, those are the Jack Flaherty days.
Good old days.
When that stuff happens as often as it has for the Cardinals over the past couple of seasons, it becomes a really puzzling trend. And this is simply the latest example of it. Alex, what did you make yesterday when you saw the news that after the Cardinals gave us this quote, when you take a base down there in the minors, the value of an out isn't the same, so you take chances with more risk, even if it's not the right time or the opportunity to do it. Victor Scott is figuring it out. If I'm hitting down here at the number 9 spot, then the top of the lineup is up now. So when I go, when do I not? When do I risk it? When do I not risk it? Can I just outrun the game up here? Those are different variables to it because making an out up here is meaningful. Down there, it's a learning experience. It's a different game. That's why he needs to be here. When you go from that to yesterday's announcement that he's going to be sent down, what was your reaction?
As the great Michael Scott once said, BK, fool me once, strike one. Fool me twice, strike 3. Because this Cardinals team just continues to tell you one thing and then do the other. It's the same frustration with Victor Scott that I had with the Jordan Walker, to where it was we brought him up because he's only going to be a platoon bat and he's going to hit against lefties, and then he gets sent back down because now we don't need him, and then he comes back up, and then a week later all of a sudden it's, hey, he's an everyday player and we need to get him to play right now. You told me that Victor Scott, who was hitting well for you, who was at least contributing offensively and figuring out how to hit at the major leagues, you told me that, well, we just need him to get to work more with Willie McGee because he's just got to get that first step towards the ball in center field, and he's so good, we want to make sure he takes the right steps. And then all of a sudden it's, well, now he's got to go down and get reps. Now he's got to go down and figure it out there. It feels an awful lot like we're right back to philosophical differences, to where the manager's telling you, like, hey, he's good, we want him to work with our guys. But the general manager, the president of baseball operations, is saying if he's not playing, he's not going to be up at this major league level.
And I kind of understand both perspectives, honestly. And I think the reason why is because I think the manager, without saying it, is saying we don't have the necessary instruction available to these guys down in the minor leagues right now. But if you wanted Victor Scott to be here, to work with your major league coaching staff, to get that outfield instruction, to get the base running instruction, the reason why you want that to happen here without him getting the playing time is because it's not happening there in AAA. And if that's the case and I'm the manager and I know this is going to be the player that I have to win with down the road because he's going to be a part of this roster, whether it's right now or in 2025 when we're really trying to push again, well, I want that guy to be the best version of himself. And if I believe that that happens here and not down there, I want him to be here. And as the president of baseball operations, I would also understand if Mo said to himself, well, if he's not going to play, then he's got to go down to play. He needs to be getting everyday opportunities. But this goes back to they have a problem with their development system right now, a huge one. And it's showing up every single day that we watch these games, where you watch them and you're like, man, it doesn't look right to me. It doesn't seem like this team is what it was supposed to be. And whether that's because of the on-field instruction up here or down there, whatever it is, they've lost the plot.
Yeah.
And when I see decisions like this that don't make sense and they consistently happen, it indicates to all of us with blinking lights, something is happening here and it needs to be paid attention to. And I don't know if this is something that can be fixed with just the change that they've made now in their director of their player development, and they made that last week. But it feels bigger than that to me, Alex.
And I mean, as much as I understand, I just partially disagree with the fact of like, well, he needs to play. If he's not playing at the majors, we're going to send him down. I think he needs to play at the majors if you're going to be relying on him next year. But if you're not playing him at the majors, it's still beneficial for him to be around and work with these guys and get reps with these guys rather than sending it back down to the minors, because he just showed you what he was doing in the minors and how it translated to the majors. Steps forward in terms of progressing that talent and developing them properly is continuing to improve at the major league level, not going back down to AAA.
I think I, generally speaking, agree with you. I do think he needs playing time. Like, I think you get better by doing.
And I think that should be at the major leagues.
I agree, but like at the expense of who?
I mean, if you want me to be honest, Michael Ciani. You're not contending right now.
Fair, but they're the same age. And I think what they're showing you is they trust right now Michael Ciani more than they trust Victor Scott. And if that's their decision, I mean, you can make an argument on either side of that.
Right.
I would probably, I've gone back and forth on this. I can understand either argument, honestly, but if you decide we're going to lean Ciani now, well, then I probably do understand that we need to send Victor Scott down. But that decision is a week ago, not yesterday. And that's where I think that and a week is not going to be the end-all, be-all, right? Like, it's the same thing as when they called Jordan Walker up to be the platoon bat. 1 week of development for Jordan Walker, not the end-all, be-all. That's not going to be the thing that, like, makes or breaks his career. But it's weird, and it could potentially impact his confidence and him continuing to be like up and down and up and down. This is not the way that you handle top prospects. And that's the case with Jordan Walker. It's the case with Thomas Sajaci. It's the case with Victor Scott. It's the case with Matthew Liberatore. It's the case with Zach Thompson. Like, all of these guys, it feels like they've just been, you're in this role and then this role and then this role and then you're up and then you're down. It's like, just tell them what you want them to do. Tell them who you want them to be, what kind of a player you expect them to be, give them the correct instruction to become that player, and then put them on the plan to get there. And over the last 2 years, I think far too often they have not been put in the position to succeed. T-Bone, what did you think about this when you saw the news yesterday?
Yeah, I typically would side on he probably does need to be playing, so I understand the side that Mo is taking in terms of he needs to be playing every day. They do need to send him down. But I do understand Ollie's perspective. I'm with you, though. To me, I don't care which one you truly believe in, whether it is he should be up here working with the major league staff or he should be down at the minor leagues getting playing time. The organization as a whole, though, has to be on the same plan. You know, and I think I go back to when we talked with your buddy that covers the Kansas City Royals, and that was just on the pitching side of things. And he said they basically had a plan from the pitching coach at the major league level through the front office all the way down through their minor league system at the 4 levels as to here's what we want to do with our pitchers. Well, it's clear the major league staff has a different opinion on how to handle the prospects and that they want them up here, probably for what you were saying, of they don't feel like they've got enough instructors down the minor league to actually benefit them from being down there and developing. But then the front office has a different opinion of, no, he's got to be down there playing. You know, that's what's most important is the playing time. The playing time is, you know, you got to do to get better at this in baseball. I don't care which route you go, but the organization as a whole has to be on the same page. And that's what is frustrating with these decisions is it is clear that the Walker decision in the platoon, in my opinion, was not on the same page. They were not on the same page from the get-go. They ended up walking that back and making it sound all hunky-dory. Well, now I'm not buying that was hunky-dory because of the same situation that just happened with Victor Scott. So for me, it's just the frustration of there clearly is, to your point, there is no direction for the St. Louis Cardinals. They clearly have a player development issue, and they're not on the same page. The organization cannot run flawlessly, and you get these kind of headlines coming out of the organization when everybody's not on the same page, and that's how it needs to operate. The manager needs to know what the front office is doing. The front office has to communicate with the manager to know what he wants to do and what he thinks is best for the player, and then you can actually operate like an actual organization.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be this thing where, like, one person says the sky is blue, the other says the sky is red, right? It doesn't have to be that significant in terms of the disagreement philosophically. It could be as simple as like one person, manager, for example, believes that the best plan for this player to develop is to get pregame instruction with the best instructors in the organization every single day, and that can only take place, in his opinion, at the major league level. And the general manager or president of baseball operation in this scenario believes that the best way for that player to develop is by going back down to the minor leagues and playing every day. And the manager could then, and this is all us kind of reading the tea leaves, right? This is not us reporting specifically that this is what's happening, but it feels that way based upon some of the conversations that have taken place and some of the quotes that have been released. The manager might then say, well, yeah, he can go down and play every day, but if he's not getting the right reps, if he's not doing it the right way every time, and he's not getting the correct feedback, is he actually getting better, or is he potentially even getting into bad habits that we then have to break again the next time that he comes back up? That's the kind of thing that could be taking place within an organization, and it's not butting heads necessarily so much as like it's two people that aren't totally in line. And that can't happen. It's happened far too often where, like, one guy's kind of veering off to the left and the other guy's veering off to the right. And that's happened far too often over the last 2 years. I mean, I look no further than the Contreras thing last year. That, to me, is the moment where we all saw, like, okay, this is weird. What's going on here? And since that moment where they took him out of the catcher's situation and said, hey, he's going to start taking some reps in the outfield. And it was like, what? You just gave this guy a massive contract to be your catcher and said when you signed him, we know that it's going to be different and it's a bat-first catcher and we want that. And then a month in, he's an outfielder and a DH now? What are you talking about? That was the moment for me that something kind of pinned in my head where I was like, this is different. This isn't right. But this cannot become a trend. And now since then, it's been a trend.
And that one was a weird decision, but the organization was on the same page on that one.
They weren't, though. Because remember, at first, it was Ollie comes out and says he's going to be taking reps in the outfield. And then the very next day, Mo meets with the media and says, that's not happening. He's just going to take a step back from his catching duties right now and be a DH for us and then work his way back into the catching
duties.
That
was a couple of days following the comments from Jack Flaherty talking about him as a catcher and not being on the same page and calling different pitches.
In my head, I was thinking it was Contreras that came out and said, no, I don't want to be in the outfield. Because I think he ended up saying that as well.
It was Mo.
Yeah.
Mo came out. I think it was on the KMOX show where he said that's not happening. We're not going to be putting him in the outfield. He's not taking any reps.
The way I read that one at the time and still kind of do is the actual plan was he was going to go in the outfield, and then they heard the backlash, and Mo was the one who ended up walking it back. To me, they were still on the same page for that one as an organization.
So real quick, BK, because here's my problem with the development side of it. Michael Ciani, the moment he came back up, he's played 7 games, and right now he's batting 130 with an on-base percentage of 167, an OPS of 297. In that same time frame, because Victor Scott goes down and he's like a bench bat for a few games before they send him down yesterday. But in the same time frame, those 7 games prior to Michael Ciani coming up, he was hitting Victor Scott 297 with a 487 slug and an 837 OPS. In terms of development, why does that guy go to your bench and then go back down when he is performing at the major league level?
Well, I think you've got a lot of people that would be in full agreement with you, and I don't have a strong, it's a bad thing for radio. I don't have a strong take one way or the other on the Ciani versus Scott thing because I just don't have a full-throated endorsement one way or the other.
I just think the mindset for the Cardinals was still, well, we're going to compete. Michael Ciani gives us the better shot to compete.
I think there's some truth to that, but I also think they believe Ciani's a better player today. And I don't know if they're right about that, but defensively he's better. And in terms of contact rate, I do think he's a little better. I think the potential, though, is still much higher with Victor Scott. Because if Victor Scott gets his first step down, he's going to be an elite defensive center fielder. And if Victor Scott can figure out how to make contact more often, he has way more pop in his bat than what Ciani has or probably ever will have.
At least he was showing you progress.
Ciani was producing. We got to remember, when Ciani was here the last time, prior to the IL stint, he was hitting like 300 for a 40-game stretch.
But that was versus is, and like Victor Scott
it's
a very
small sample size.
I know, but man,
at the time, all you had to lean back on was that Ciani, the last time that we saw him, was a 300 hitter for an extended stretch of time. So it was a difficult decision. I think they should have treated that situation the same way that they've treated catcher, where it's just, hey, let's flip spots every day.
Yeah.
Hey, one guy gets 2 games, and the next game is the other guy, and then we'll go back to the other guy for 1 game, and then we'll go 2 guys for the other. Like I know that's hard to do as a player, where you don't feel like you're really getting your rhythm. but that's probably the way that I would have handled it. Obviously, they had very different ideas.
Yeah. It's just, man, that development stage. That's the part that's so concerning about this team right now. And I know it's like kind of what we just spent this time talking about in the segment, but when you see development and then you're like, nope, go back down to the AAA and continue. It's like, why, man? He's got to do this at the majors.
Yeah, I think there's the center field one is, to me, a little bit more nuanced than some of the other decisions. Like the Contreras thing was just baffling at the time and remains questionable today. The Jordan Walker platooning never made sense, never once. The Ollie Marmol extension prior to the start of this season was like that. That's just bad messaging as much as it is anything else. He's coming off of a bad season, and even if you like Ollie, and I do, you can't make that extension, and you certainly can't make that announcement at that point in the calendar year, right? So some of the stuff that they've done over the last couple of years just doesn't make a lot of sense. This one feels more nuanced. What I didn't like was the messaging of he needs to be up here. Oh, no, a week later, going down. The way that they've handled center field, though, I don't know. I didn't necessarily have quite as big of an issue with it. It was sending Scott down now that I had the problem with. All right, coming up in 15 minutes, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll get into some questions and answers, but next, NFL Quick Hitter, some of the biggest news out of week number 1 in the NFL, and a trend that seems to be taking place right now in the league that I want to get your guys' thoughts on. We'll get into that next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK for my friends over at Victory Men's Health. It is time to unlock your inner champion today. And the place to do so is Victory Men's Health. They've got 4 great locations across the St. Louis area. For me, the one that is most convenient is going over to Town and Country. That's my spot. You could go to any of the 4, though. Check them out online at victorymenshealth.com. The reason to do so is because they can help you out with some of the goals that you may have, whether that's weight loss. If you had some weight loss goals that you weren't able to meet yourself, well, they could potentially help you achieve them over at Victory Men's Health. Also, if you have any low testosterone symptoms, if you feel like you don't have the same amount of energy that you did, you're not getting the same amount of effectiveness out of your workout, they could potentially help you out with that. Erectile dysfunction, same thing. For me, I went over there and they took a micronutrient lab. They sent it off, found out where all of my levels were. That included testosterone, where they find out where you're at in the range for testosterone for a healthy male at your age. They got those numbers back and they found out that I had some pretty significant vitamin deficiencies. And when they find that out, they say, okay, we can set you up with this plan, a couple of things that we can help you out with as well outside of the vitamin deficiencies. They did exactly that for me. They send it to my house. I get it monthly now. It's super helpful. They've unlocked my inner champion. They can do the same for you at Victory Men's Health and victorymenshealth.com.
Terry Henricks here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals strained the bases loaded in the ninth last night as they fall to the Cincinnati Reds 3-0. They'll be back in action tonight. 6:45 will be first pitch. Lance Lynn will get the start for St. Louis. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, Alex playing hurt today, so we're going to try to keep him in
Always playing hurt.
the studio as long as possible.
Well, if I have to run out of the studios, you'll understand why.
Appreciate you being
Maybe
here,
you won't understand why, but I know why.
I think we do now. All right, Alex. So I did want to get your guys' perspective on something. There's been a lot of talk on Monday Night Football. They had the Monday Night Countdown. They brought in Troy and Joe, and SVP asked Troy Aikman, he said, hey, listen, the numbers are really down this week for quarterbacks around the league. The production is as low as we've ever seen from week one in the NFL. If you look over the last 5 years, like the passing numbers, touchdowns, yards, all of this is way down. And Troy Aikman basically said, and I appreciate this about Troy, and this at this point in his career, he's basically like, yeah, I don't care anymore. I'm going to say what I think. He's like, yeah, there was a lot of bad quarterback play. What do you want me to say, SVP? Like, it was bad. Bad quarterback play across the league.
I.e. watch Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, all
a lot of young guys
go out there and not know what to do.
Daniel Jones.
It went beyond that, though. So there's this nerdy number called pass rate over expectation. I'm going to break it down as easily as I possibly can. How often would a team be expected to pass in this situation versus how often do they actually pass in this situation? Okay, so like 3rd and 10, you're expected to pass in that spot. 2nd and 7, more often than not, you'd see a decent amount of passing in
Unless
that
you're
spot.
Dan
Right?
Campbell and you say, just run it down their throat.
And so they've tracked this over time and find out how often is a team expected to pass in this situation. And over the past few years, it's everybody in the league is passing at a higher rate than you would typically expect because it's just become a passing league. This week, there were only 8 teams across the NFL that had a positive pass rate over expectation, which means they passed more than you would think. 24 of the 32 teams ran more often than you would expect. Alex, the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because I think we've all believed that it was going to come in this direction, that there would be a swing of the pendulum in the opposite direction of becoming more of a running league. Too high safeties lead to that. Smaller linebackers, speed all over the place defensively, smaller defensive ends that are more pass rushers than run stoppers. Have we officially seen this? Have we seen it, the pendulum swing in the other direction? And this year will be the year of the running game. Do you see that happening?
I do, and yes, because I think there's a lot of teams that emphasize the run, and there's a lot of teams now that feel like they have a two-headed monster that they can utilize. Like you look at what Detroit did in that game against the Rams. When you have two guys that you could just continuously run out there, Chargers did a little of this as well with Dobbins and Edwards. It feels like teams view it like, hey, we've got two fresh guys. Let's run it down their throat here early on in the season. I do think, though, as more offenses get more comfortable, you'll see them go back to throwing the ball a little bit more. It feels like it's that testing the water for the first few weeks of the season just to see how defenses like to approach it and what we can get away with, what we can't get away with. And then by like week 3 or 4, teams start to get a little bit more creative and say, hey, let's thread the needle a little bit more and let's have some fun out there.
Yeah, I think these numbers will come back up like once you get to like week 4. Because I think what you're seeing right now, especially early in the season, one, I do agree, there is a lot of bad quarterback play across the league. Like, I don't think it's as deep of a league.
And none
at
of
the
them play in
position.
preseason.
That's where I was going, is I think it's the preseason thing where nobody really plays their starters, and the teams that do benefit from it. You know, Mahomes and the Chiefs look pretty crisp. Well, hey, they played in the preseason. So
they also run a really hard training camp where
exactly.
they have pads like almost every day of camp, and that's not the case all across the league right now.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, is the first 4 weeks to me, and it's why I was a little surprised, honestly, by how well the Chiefs and the 49ers look coming out of it, is because I feel like the last couple of years, it's been the first 4 weeks, it's like, whoa, the Chiefs are 2-2. They're probably this is the year they fall back down to earth. And then it's the freaking Chiefs. They become the Chiefs 4 weeks in because it's like their preseason.
And if you look at the teams that had the most success in week one, like those are teams that you expect to be in the Super Bowl. And why were they crisp? Because they know what it takes to win. They know the focus that you need to have. The Dallas Cowboys, the Detroit Lions, you've got the Chiefs, even the Rams that did come out and looked good in that Lions game. They know what it takes to win. So they're not going to tiptoe through the preseason and offseason. They know how to get ready for the first week of the season.
All right, next thing up here as we go through some NFL quick hitters with Alex T-Bone on BK. The NFL averaged 21 million viewers this week per game. That was the most watched week one in NFL history.
Makes sense.
The league said Wednesday morning, earlier today, that the per game average on TV was up 12% over this time last year. They began measuring this stuff in 1988. They've never had a greater week one overall viewership than we did this year. Now, I'm not getting political, but last night, for example, there was a debate that a lot of people watched. Whether you loved it or hated it, whatever. But it was on television, and we are now, 8 weeks away from a national election in a presidential campaign year. This is typically the year in which you would see a decrease in NFL ratings. We saw it in 20, we saw it in 2016, and people asked, especially with quarterback play as bad as it was this week, people asked at the time, like, is this about the quarterback play? Is this about the politics situation that's going on right now in our country? Like, we've seen this a lot in recent seasons. Why do you think it is that the NFL resonated the way that it did in week one? Was it just good matchups? Like, I didn't feel like it was great football around the league.
I kind of feel like it was all of it, all the above. Like, I think there was excitement for the players, that the quarterbacks that you had drafted. On the politics side of it, I feel like it was a perfect escape from kind of the summer and say, like, hey, let's get into something not outside that I have to think about, where you sit down and you just shut your brain off. I just want to watch a game and just not focus, because for the summer, it's literally baseball. That's it. That's all you've got to pay attention to. But the first week of football, it feels like, and college had to have felt that way too, to where it was like, can we just get to something else?
It also feels like football has become kind of an escape in a way that it wasn't previously.
Absolutely.
From politics. Like 2020, dude, we're in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
Football was very much not an escape. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was one of the lead stories nationally because of the COVID stuff.
It felt like television wasn't an escape for the longest time in COVID. I mean,
football became a news story politically during that time. 2016, there was some politics stuff as well that year, racial related. So this, for the first time, and don't get me wrong, like Tyreek Hill stuff happened over the weekend, and after seeing that video, like, it's not even necessarily a political story. It's just sad that we deal with that in America. But that other than that, it was genuinely an escape over the weekend. So I think there's something to that. I will be curious to see how the ratings hold up over the next 6 to 8 weeks as we get further and further into this political cycle.
Think every year, though, it feels like sports betting takes another step forward.
That's a great point.
And when you know, like, baseball's just not the same in terms of football to bet on. And as soon as you have that first week of it, I mean, I know because my dad was this way. He was like, I finally have something I can, like, actually throw money at rather than baseball and things. So it feels like sports gambling just continues to increase in terms of importance.
And I think credit to the NFL as well. They stay in the headlines all off season. So it goes into your back burner. But, this off season you had, the Giants Hard Knocks is on about how they operate this off season. Oh, they really did want to get rid of Daniel Jones.
And they tampered.
And then it's, now you got the training camp one with the Chicago Bears. So it's always in the back of your mind to where you can kind of start to build up that excitement. And then, boom, it's there. You're ready to go. You've also got the headlines, to your point. I think the rookie quarterbacks drew in those big numbers. Because I said here on last Friday, I think one of the big headlines from the weekend is, wow, the future is now. Look at these 3 rookie quarterbacks. And instead we left going, oh, crap, no, those were bad.
I also think they did a really good job of the island games being big games.
Yeah.
Like Ravens, Chiefs, bam, coming out with a good punch.
Packers,
Eagles, same thing. Good game, came down to the wire, and a couple of big-time opponents, right? And then you get into Sunday, and it's like, okay, there was no real marquee matchup in the 3 o'clock games, but Tom Bleepin' Brady was going to be the lead announcer on one of the games, and you could watch him.
And you had the rematch.
Sunday night, Rams-Lions, great game, went to overtime, 2 big-time teams. And then, of course, on Monday night, you had the Jets versus the 49ers, 2 teams that are expected to be contenders. Was not a great game, but was between 2 teams, big markets, passionate fan bases. Jets fans, obviously, wanted to see what Aaron Rodgers looks like. So I think they did a really good job with that as well. Of island games are going to be marquee matchups. And then on Sunday at noon, hey, we know you got We know. You're going to be watching Red Zone. You're going to be watching the games. You're going to enjoy this. And then at 3 o'clock, you get to see Tom Brady. So they did a really good job in that regard as well. All right, he's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Questions and answers coming up next year on 101 ESPN. Alex, there are two bets that I love this week. I love the Colts minus the points because, of course, one, I love the Colts. Two, the Green Bay Packers are starting a guy that should not be a starting quarterback in the NFL with Malik Willis this week. So, Colts, I love minus the points. Here's the problem. Over on FanDuel, I can only get them minus 3.5. On Circa Sports in Illinois, the best app where you can be betting, they're minus 3. I get the better line over at Circa, which is typically the case. And then I love the over in the Rams and Cardinals games. Those teams do not play a whole lot of defense. They have high-flying offenses. It's 49.5, though, over on FanDuel. It's down at 49 on Circa. Alex, this is a theme. You will get better odds. You will win more money by betting on Circa than you will on FanDuel or DraftKings.
And the best part about it, too, BK, is they keep as little as money possible on those large market bets if you're going down that path, whether it's those big parlays or maybe you're going down the futures bet, because after watching the Lions dominate the Rams, T-Bone, might as well throw a little money on them winning the NFC this upcoming season. Whatever it is, you need to do it over on the Circa Sports Illinois app. Do it now, download it today, and get set for Week 2 in the NFL. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers.
I'm asking you the same question.
I know there's no audio over here, and I pointed. I gave the cue.
You know the segment?
You don't know what segment we're doing?
Oh, is this supposed to be question and answers?
So
Yeah.
like it's harshly on me.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm not going to lie.
He got so mad
I'm
at us.
already advanced in my rundown down to the 12 o'clock segment.
He looked at you like, what? There's no audio, and you pointed at me.
Yeah, I was so confused as to what you were talking about.
He was certain that I had screwed up. I was like,
Yeah, I wasn't very certain. All right, here we go.
You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's questions and answers.
Presented by WindowWorldSt.Louis.com. Simply the best for less.
Nailed it.
I tell my wife this all the time, that she's got the eyes that, like, they tell
I'm so
you.
glad you brought this up.
Her eyes say what she's thinking without her actually saying it. So if my wife is like thinking like, hey, bleep you, in my life, her eyes will say it, and she doesn't have to open her mouth. What T-Bone just looked at BK, if people saw it on her YouTube channel, was like, what the bleep do you want me to do, man?
Look, my eyes had a tone problem. Okay.
Hey, I'd prefer the eyes having the tone problem.
I'm not kidding. I scrolled down and my rundown just blew right past question. My rundown was at 12 o'clock. There was no audio.
So is the clock. So you're you weren't entirely wrong. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for an abbreviated version of questions and answers from the 636. Guys, I really need a lock for Survivor this week. Half the league is gone because the Bengals lost last week against the Patriots, so I have a real shot at some big money. Who should I be backing this weekend? Ooh. All right, so going into this weekend, a few of the matchups that I would imagine people are going to be targeting. Cowboys over the Saints will be one that I think people will look at. I don't know if people want to use the Lions this early in their pool, but the Lions going up against the Bucs is one option as well. How would you guys feel about the Colts against the Packers? It's on the road, which isn't great, but the Packers have Malik Willis as their starter. That would be one that I would consider personally.
I like that one because the Colts have to be living off of a high, even though they lost that game, about how good their offense can be. And now you got a defense that can go up against Malik Willis. I like that one. I'll tell you two other ones.
Ravens?
No, not the Ravens, the Jaguars.
See, I worry about Lawrence against that defense.
Dude, yeah.
I get it, but I don't trust that offense to do anything.
If you haven't used the Ravens yet, Ravens at home against the Raiders, I always try to avoid divisional matchups if you can, and I try to avoid a road team if you can, especially this early in the season. As you get later, you can't really avoid it. But Ravens against a non-divisional opponent at home, coming off of a loss, I'd be shocked if they start the season 0-2. They're 9.5-point favorites in this one. I think the Ravens at home against the Raiders is a pretty good Survivor.
What about the Commanders? I know you said you don't like divisional.
Yeah,
I don't know how many Washington games you're going to be able to do, though.
My hope is to
rookie
avoid them.
quarterback. Yeah, I don't want to use them until I absolutely have to later on this season. Divisional game, rookie quarterback going up against what is a decent defense and has a good pass rush. If nothing else, bad offensive line, that makes me nervous. I would go Ravens this week, I think.
Yeah, I like the Ravens one. I don't know if you want to use this team early, and I would be shocked if you used them already in week one. Maybe you did. I like the Cowboys at home against the Saints. I think people are going to get too worried on that game because of the Saints, and they put up huge points against the Panthers. I don't think the Saints are a very good football team. The Cowboys should be able to dominate them, and they're at home opener. I like the Cowboys this week as well.
All right, from the 314, guys, do you think that Palante is just another Dakota Hudson? Great stuff, tons of walks. Your thoughts? I would push back a little bit on the great stuff for either Dakota Hudson or Andre Palante.
Oh, slow down there.
I don't think either of them have great stuff. I think they're both solid pitch to contact guys. And yes, I do think there's a very similar comparison between the two. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, though. Dakota Hudson was not a terrible number 5 starter.
He's an ace.
He was a perfectly acceptable number 5 starter. The problem was he was put into the rotation as a mid-rotation starter, and I don't believe he was ever really capable of being that. So if they expect Andre Palante next year to be a number 5, I think he's more than capable of doing that, just as Dakota Hudson was and is.
Yeah, I do think the walks are very similar, a little concerning, but he's finding ways to get out of it, which Dakota Hudson did for the first couple of years of his career, which is good enough for you. He's cheap, and if that's a number 5, I'll take that any day of the week over going to pay $13 million for Lance Lynn, who does the same thing.
Yeah, I don't have too much concern that he'll be Hudson. I think when he's on the ground, and sure, he does have some walk, but he does have a little swing and miss to his game. Like, if he needs a strikeout, I do feel like he can get it. He's a perfect number 5. And the last couple starts have been a little weird because the walks have been there for him. They've been really high. I also feel like he does have games where there are no walk problems. Unlike Hudson, where I always felt like you could, like, write and pen, there's going to be 4 walks, there's probably going to be, like, 4 hits, and then it's just a matter of does the rest of the outing go his way.
He's Tanner Hendrickson. That is Alex Ferrario. I'm Brandon Kiley. Good work by T-Bone to adjust their mid-segment. Appreciate him for doing that.
Phenomenal stuff.
We will, coming up next, get into the positions that we can get answers on for the Cardinals heading into 2025 now that they are effectively out of the race. So we'll do the segment that T-Bone thought we were doing here coming up next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So what are the positions that we can get answers for on 2025 now that the Cardinals are not mathematically, but effectively out of the playoff race? T-Bone, we were talking about this before the show today, and you brought up the catching situation and how they've split it so far. What stands out to you about the way that the Cardinals have gone about that and what it means for their plans going into this offseason?
Well, I thought for sure when Herrera got called up, when Contreras went down with the broken hand or finger, whichever one it is, I thought for sure that they were going to go Pages every 2 days, and then you get one game for Herrera. And maybe Herrera gets like a DH day. They try to get his bat in the line maybe a little bit more. But I thought for sure, as much as they talked about, hey, here's why Herrera is down. He's terrible against the running game. He has a noodle arm. We need to have Pages behind the plate. Oh, by the way, his game calling, chef's kiss. I thought for sure it was going to be okay. It's going to be 2 games for Pages, and then he'll get kind of the Contreras treatment, which is he'll get a day off because catching sucks.
They should try Contreras in the outfield.
If only we could.
Or Herrera.
I mean, I'm not opposed to him changing positions this offseason, so he's still here. But
First base.
We do need more outfielders on this team.
They legitimately need a first baseman.
Yeah,
Hey, they have one. Big Luke Baker.
His name's Paul Goldschmidt.
God, he'll be back.
But what I find interesting with how they're handling it right now is it is a true 50-50 split. I think it's been 8 games for Pages and 7 games for Herrera, and both have played pretty well. I mean, you mentioned Pages' numbers earlier. His OPS is inflated because, 2 of his 4 hits are home runs. But Herrera's getting on base, hitting for average. His slug's not really there, but again, he's getting on base and he's hitting for average, and he's got clearly a major league bat. What I find interesting is down this final 18-game stretch that they've got left here is if those guys are battling for the roster spot in 2025. And the reason I say that is because I think you can go into next season and say, okay, Ivan Herrera is our backup and Pages is the third guy that's kind of in the minor leagues. He's at AAA. He feels like the perfect third catcher for a roster because he's not going to be great offensively probably, but he can sit down there, work with some young guys while he's got this great catching game-calling ability. I just don't know if there's that role for Herrera if he loses the spot. If they leave the season and say, you know what, Pages in pen is our backup catcher next year, I'm probably looking to trade Herrera then in the offseason, and I really don't want to do that. That's why I'm open to a position change for him. But Ivan Herrera has nothing to prove at AAA. Ivan Herrera just kind of waste away as an asset for the St. Louis Cardinals if he's at AAA level, because it's clear he can hit that pitching. It's clear he can hit major league pitching. Yeah. And I don't know if you can significantly improve his defense enough at the AAA level. I just don't know if that can be a thing that he can actually go down there and work on when he has such prospect pedigree and would be able to get you something good in return. So that's why I find this so fascinating for this final stretch is if Herrera loses out on this spot and they are convinced at the end of the year, you know what, Pages is the backup guy, what does the future look like for Herrera? Probably is best used as a trade asset to try and help the organization for 2025 and beyond.
When I look at what they're going to do this offseason, I think there are 4 spots in particular that I'd be honing in on of what's the plan there?
I wrote down 4 as well. I'm curious if we have the same ones.
Catcher would be 1 with the Herrera, Pages, and we didn't even mention all of the guys, and there's 10 of them that are legit prospects in their minor league system right now at that position as well.
Jimmy Crooks and Bernal, I think, are the 2 that have been promoted a couple of times.
Yeah. And there's others. They just drafted 2 more that are currently down in the Florida Complex League. So they've got a lot of guys at the position, and you do probably trade from that surplus. Now, I don't know what kind of value Pages would have via trade. If you're going to make one of them available and you just want to maximize your return, it is probably Herrera that you trade. I also think he's the one of the 2 that could come back to haunt you in that regard, where he goes elsewhere and becomes Sean Murphy, basically. I could see that in his range of outcomes. 270 hitter with 15 to 20 home run pop as a everyday catcher behind the plate for somebody.
And improve defensively.
Yeah, he needs to improve defensively to become that. I'm not sure he is that guy defensively, but that's in his range of outcomes. So that would be 1.
We can all agree that that's going to happen then.
Center field is another.
Yep, that was mine.
Victor Scott versus Ciani. I don't know what their plan is there. If you kind of like the Herrera versus Pages side, there's one that I think has more value via trade and Victor Scott than the other. But you can make an argument that right now, with the way that they play, they've prioritized Ciani and Pages over the guy that has more value across the league. That might be part of the problem, that other teams see more value in the other guy that the Cardinals don't see the value in. But
it'll be fine.
I digress. Second base, another spot.
That was my 3rd one.
Donovan, Sajaci, Gorman, Weatherholt, who should fly through the system if he's as good as people expected. He's been heating up pretty well lately.
We need to keep Jose Firmino on this roster just in case.
And then finally, and this is the one where I figured I thought we would have those same 3 at the top, Alex. The last one is starting pitching.
Yeah, that was mine too. And I didn't know if we were going to consider that a position or not, but that to me was, I ranked them. Catcher was number 1, center field was number 2, starting pitching was number 3 for me.
You've got Palante, who's part of your rotation. Sonny Gray's part of your rotation next year. I think Kyle Gibson will be a part of their rotation next year. Beyond that, I wouldn't expect Lance Lynn back, but maybe they do. I don't know what their plan is with Fetty. I think you make that trade because you expect him to be here next year, but a $7.5 million starting pitcher that can effectively be a number 3 for a contender, that has real value on the trade market in an offseason where guys are going to get paid. So if they made him available, I think they could get something pretty significant in return in Eric Fetty. They also have 6 dudes right now down in their AAA rotation that are just kind of sitting there. And like, what's the plan with Michael McGreevy? What's the plan with Gordon Graceffo? Are you going to use them? Are you going to trade them? When is Quinn Matthews' ETA? When is Tink Hence's ETA? I would assume he's probably going to be starting at AAA next year, and at that point, you're always a call away, right? At any point, he could be up at the major league level next year, whether for your bullpen or your starting rotation. So I think those are the 4 things to me that I would hone in on. The rotation to me is not something we're going to really learn much about down the stretch. Those other 3 spots, I think we should.
I think we should on the starting pitching, too, because like you just mentioned, there's 3 guys that you look at, whether it's Fedde, Gibson, however you want to go about it. There's 3 guys that I look at that are like predetermined they're going to be in your rotation or should be in your rotation. I think Michaelis is going to fall in there. He shouldn't be. You should be finding out if Michael McGreevy is a starting pitcher for you, if Gordon Graceffo is a starting pitcher. I understand that, but I think that should be a position that they're in. Like, I know we're not going to, but the Cardinals should be learning that right now, rather than sit there and say, well, we've got Matz, we've got Lynn, we've got our rotation set for next year. That should probably be one of the top priorities for this team to say, let's figure this out so we can stop this cycle of bringing in guys to just eat innings for us.
And I think, and I agree, like, in the best case scenario, they should try and find out what McGreevy and Graceffo are. I think there's such a logjam with their roster, though, that they can't really do it. So I think what they're doing and what they're making as the 4th one that they're trying to learn about, because I agree with the first 3 on your guys' list. The 4th one they're trying to learn about is some of the bullpen arms. Is they're trying to learn about, okay, what is Chris Roycroft?
Yeah.
What is Riley O'Brien? Can Ryan Fernandez be a closer if we were to, trade Ryan Helsley in the offseason? I think it's more on those bullpen guys. Can Matthew Liberatore be the high-leverage left-handed arm still for us? Like, I think it's more about the bullpen trying to learn what they have in that mix than it is in the rotation. And I don't even know if they're operating the wrong way. Like, yeah, they should probably have these young guys up. Honestly, they probably should have placed a Kyle Gibson and a Lance Lynn on waivers just to see if somebody would have taken him.
I wouldn't do that with Gibson. I think Gibson has done everything he needs to be back here next year. I have no problem with them bringing him back.
The reason I say it is just to open up those spots on the roster more than anything else, because they are in a log jam. Because if you do move a Lynn to the bullpen or a Michaelis to the bullpen, and you want to call up one of those young arms, well, now I got to move one of those bullpen arms that's young and move them down.
That's going to happen.
And
I think
now I don't know
Roycroft
what's
is probably
happening.
getting sent down today in favor of Lance Lynn.
That wouldn't shock me.
That would be my guess. I don't know what else you do.
What you should
unless
do
they
is,
decide to go with like a Riley O'Brien, but then what was the point of all of this?
Right.
Yeah,
like you might as well continue to give him opportunities. I don't know genuinely who else they would send down. Like, I don't see another option.
What you should do is come up with a rogue injury for one of the starting pitchers to open up the spot in your rotation.
For the guy that just had the injury that you're putting back into the rotation. It's a difficult spot to be in, and it's a spot of their own creation. Like they created all of these different log jams that are effectively there right now.
The problem is they're going to convince themselves that log jam at the starting pitching side is just going to be fine to come back with next year.
Probably. The other thing that I wanted to bring up here, because if we're learning stuff about 2025, a big part of that is going to be Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman, we would assume. Now, I talked about Gorman at the second base situation. He's now down in AAA, and he's been a lot better lately. In his last 5 games, he has 4 home runs. He's hitting it hard. That's what you'd expect him to do once he goes down to AAA. He's still not hitting for a lot of average. He's hitting .235 on base percentage of just under 300 in this stretch since he's gone back down. It's 16 games now. He's still striking out more than you would want him to down at the minor league level, but it's not nearly as bad as it was up here because he's going up against AAA pitching instead of major league pitching. I think the frustrating part about all of this is that I don't think you're learning anything about Nolan Gorman down in AAA. And this is, I think, what you said, Alex, about, hey, just these guys have to learn at the big league level, and they've got to fail, and they've got to be able to adjust. I thought it was the right move to send him down. You kind of had to, right? Like he was clearly overmatched, and even if it was just confidence that he could regain by going down to AAA, that's fine. But what I find to be really unfortunate is I don't think you're learning much about him down there right now, and it's just kind of a waste of the last couple of weeks of the season if he's not going to get major league at-bats again. I would probably call him up. I would DFA Matt Carpenter at this point. It's no disrespect to him, but given where you're at in the standings, like just give him a job in the coaching staff for the last 2 weeks.
Make him the assistant hitting coach.
Ask him if something's hurting and do this phantom IL stint, like, right?
He was really hurt, okay?
And then he actually was, apparently. But just have Nolan Gorman come back up, and even if it's as a pinch hitter, I just want to see him get regular at-bats against right-handed pitching again and allow him to fail and then adjust accordingly. But the other guy that we have to talk about a little bit is Jordan Walker. Guys, it ain't good. He's batting 195 since he came back up, and I'm glad they're playing him every day, and this is going to be a good learning experience for him. He needs to make some serious adjustments this offseason as an offensive player. He's batting 195 since he came back up with a 575 OPS, and that includes a 5-hit day against New York. It's the same issues. It's the down and away. It's hitting the ball on the ground. Like, a lot of it is the same stuff that we've been talking about now for a year and a half. I still believe in Jordan Walker. I think he's going to be a really good major leaguer eventually. And last season is a big part of that because of how good he was. But Alex, you made the comparison earlier today about Dylan Carlson and Jordan Walker and what they both did as rookies. It's hard not to. I think Walker has way more tools than Carlson did, and knock on wood, but he hasn't dealt with the same amount of injuries early in his career as Dylan Carlson did. But that dude is the number one factor in what the Cardinals are going to be in whatever the next version of this team looks like.
We talked about it last week, that they don't have the guy that can carry you through 162. And the lone guy that you're developing that's supposed to be it is Jordan Walker. And, I mean, it's hard not to get concerned about what Dylan Carlson did in his first year and then the years prior, and then Jordan Walker in 1 year, and then this season. It's concerning just for the state and the past history of the development for a lot of these guys. And now you're seeing this with Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman. They're really in a position right now where if these guys don't at least show you signs of life by the end of the season, and I'm with you on Nolan Gorman, I was going to say that feels an awful lot like what happened those early years with Tyler O'Neill, where he'd go up and down and he'd go down and he'd smash 40 home runs in AAA. And you're like, oh, this guy's great. Yeah. But he still strike out. And you're thinking, uh-oh, that doesn't really matter once he gets to the majors. If these guys don't show you signs of life by the end of this season at the major league level, you're not just trying to, like, patch a hole for next season. You are trying to patch like a sinkhole, because things are going to get bad quick for the Cardinals if those two guys aren't who they thought they were.
Those were supposed to be the 3 and 4 hole hitters for your team whenever you get good again.
Your future Goldie and Arenado. That was the torch.
Wynn, Burleson, Walker, Gorman. There's your top 4 in the next iteration of the Cardinals contender. And instead, like, I remember we did a segment a couple of years ago now when BT was still doing the fast lane. And they were talking about, like, when is the next window of contention for the Cardinals? Right? This is like 2021 maybe. And he was like, listen, people aren't going to be happy about it, but it's like 2026 is what he was talking about. And I was like, oh my, that's 5 years from now, brother. Like, are we really waiting 5 years for their next window of contention? And his explanation was thorough and it was fair. He said, listen, like, what you're waiting for is for these guys to develop into whatever the fully formed version of themselves is. And at that point, you're kind of in that window of guys still being relatively cheap, hitting their prime, and supplementing them with free agents, trades, et cetera. And that's, boom, let's hit the ground running, right? You've got this whole core group of position players. It's basically what the Cubs did whenever they won the World Series back in 2016. But the whole idea of that version of the Cardinals being a contender was that Walker and Gorman became the middle of the order bats that they needed. And right now it's really hard to see. Hopefully that changes sooner rather than later. It's a big offseason for them, to put it
as we know as Cardinals fans, living on hopium always pays off.
Coming up next, Robert Thomas had some interesting quotes to The Athletic earlier today explaining who he would want as his ideal wingers. I was less interested in the names and more about the style of player that he was talking about. We'll let you hear what that was next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK. So I was reading over at The Athletic earlier today. Our good friend Jeremy Rutherford did a piece with Robert Thomas. And Alex, he did this mailbag questionnaire. So he had listeners, readers send him a bunch of questions that he would then ask to Robert Thomas. And one of his readers, named Michael, sent the following question. I thought it was a good one. If you could have any two wingers on your line with you who are not currently on the Blues, who would they be and why? Alex, I had two reasons why I was particularly interested in this answer. One, who are the names? But two, what style of winger is he going to bring up? So here's what Robert Thomas had to say. Again, this is via Jeremy Rutherford's piece over in The Athletic. He said, I would probably say, this is a good one. I'm going with Zach Hyman and then he reconsiders. He said, actually, I'm going to change that. I'm going to go with Brady and Matthew Tkachuk. I think with those two guys, it would be a special time, and I think we'd have a lot of success, end quote. He brought up Zach Hyman, Matthew Tkachuk, and Brady Tkachuk. Alex, stylistically, those guys all play the same style of game. Super physical, drive to the net, let's attack, right? What does that tell you about the kind of hockey player that Robert Thomas wants on his line with him?
It tells me that he needs a net front presence on his line with him. And I believe that's Jake Neighbors. I think the way he said Zach Hyman, because I read it the same way it seems like you did, BK. He said Zach Hyman. I said, okay, cool. So he's got him in Jake Neighbors. Like, that's what his hope is. But him saying Zach Hyman, Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, because I think it's also important to know who Matthew Tkachuk is. He's not just a power forward. I mean, that dude is one of the smartest players on the ice at all times. He knows how to read games. He knows how to read people, plays, and get to the front of the net, get to the right areas of the ice, i.e. that's a lot of how Pavel Buchnevich plays in St. Louis. Sure. I think Craig Berube used to say he's one of the smartest guys that he's ever coached. So you take smarts, you take big body net front presence and a playmaker. I mean, to me, the line combination that he presented in that question was essentially Pavel Buchnevich and Jake Neighbors. And to me, that's how Robert Thomas gets to be a 100-point player. You give him those line mates. Last season, Money Puck, they played 146 minutes together because that was kind of towards the end of the season. They had them together. You looked this up earlier. They averaged 3.9 expected goals per 60 minutes. Can I give you a list of some of the lines that did that last season in the NHL?
Oh, please. I love this.
Jonathan Drouin, Nathan McKinnon, and Mikko Rantanen. Suter, Miller, and Besser. Ehlers, Scheifele, Velarde. You had Bratt, Keisher, and Meyer from the New Jersey Devils. Jamie Benn, Wyatt Johnston, Logan Stankoven. Gensel, Crosby, and Rust. Hyman, McDavid, Nugent Hopkins.
I know some of those names.
Yeah.
Those are, this might surprise you guys, top lines in the NHL. And if you go and look at what the longer time frame was Pavel Buchnevich, Robert Thomas, and Jordan Kyrou, they averaged 2.6 expected goals per 60 minutes. To me, your line combination should be Pavel Buchnevich, Robert Thomas, and Jake Neighbors, because that gives you the potential of 2 30-goal scorers. I've said this before. Maybe 3 if Robert Thomas decides to get a little frisky with his shot. But more importantly, it gives you the potential of having a 100-point player for the first time since Brendan Shanahan.
I just like the combination of skill sets that exist within that line. You've got a guy that's going to go to the front of the net in Jake Neighbors. He's going to clean anything up that gets to the front of the net. You've got Robert Thomas, who has become better with his shot and more aggressive with his shot, but generally speaking wants to make plays for others, right? And you've got Booch, who at his best can do a little bit of both. He can drive to the net. He can distribute for others. He can also snipe it a little bit. Yeah. So, and he's a super smart player, and all of them can play off of the rush. That's where the best offense comes. I know people like rush team versus cycle team. If you look at the expected numbers, and it's expected numbers, so whatever, take them or leave them. But if you look at the expected numbers, the best opportunity for you to score a goal is coming off of the rush, just because the defense has a set, like it's whatever. Booch, Thomas, and Neighbors can play that way. They can also play the cycle game. So you can win in multiple different ways. You're not going to be overwhelmed defensively because Thomas and Booch are both average to above average at worst defensively. Neighbors probably average defensively, I would say, at this point in his career as well. So you can get those difficult matchups of the opposition that's going to be going up against your top line there, and you can make it work on both sides of the puck. So to me, that's a no-brainer top line. I'm very skeptical that they'll do it, though. I don't think they're going to start out the season with Jake Neighbors on the top line. I think they're going to do the same thing that they did last year, not to the same egregious degree where they have him on the fourth line. It was crazy. But I think they'll probably start him out as a middle six forward, probably on the second line, and they'll have, my guess, Booch, Thomas, and Kyra on that top line to start things off. And I totally disagree with it, but I think that's what they'll do.
My concern isn't so much because I could see him go with Neighbors, because if Thomas feels like Neighbors gives him the best chance to succeed, I could see Thomas wanting to be with Neighbors, and they go a pairing with that. Because another quote that he had in that piece with JR was him talking about the analytics that he uses, and it's puck possession. Yep. Your better puck possession is with two guys who go after the puck rather than Kyra, who is one and done. My concern is Booch isn't going to be on that line.
That was my concern.
Because of the second line center. And I told you guys in the office, I think the two most fascinating storylines once training camp opens next week is who the power play quarterback is, because Bannister made it seem like they really like the idea of Perunovich if he can showcase himself in training camp. But it's also going to be that center position, because the best thing for this team is either Dvorsky earns a spot on the NHL roster or Braden Shen showcases the ability to be a centerman.
That's got to be it. Booch shouldn't be an answer at center. I'm sorry, man. It's just not. It's not the best thing for him. It's not the best thing for the team. The best thing for the team is for Braden Shin to take that spot if Dvorsky's not ready.
Yeah.
Because then you can go Thomas, Shin, Foxa, and then Sonny, or whoever else needs to fill in at fourth line center, make that an open into
Nathan
competition.
Walker can do it until Sonny's ready.
Yeah. I think Texier technically has an opportunity to do that as well. And if he ends up being better than what you expect, maybe he becomes a third line center and Foxa drops down to that fourth line. Like, you've got options there. But the second line is far too important. And the guys that are going to be winging on that line, whether it's Booch, Kyrou, Neighbor, Saad, Holloway, whoever ends up stepping up into that line, you can't just throw it away with a guy like Booch playing in an unnatural position, a spot that even if he says he's comfortable doing it, we've all seen it. He's not the same player there. He's going to lose far too many faceoffs. He's at his best as a winger, and he fits really well with that top line with Robert Thomas. That's where I want him. He's going to get the tougher matchups, and you need him there because of what he does defensively for you as well. I really would prefer desperately to not see them go back to that experiment again.
I've said it before, and I feel like ideally your best top 9 to start the season this year, and I'll go down the path that Dvorsky doesn't make the team because I don't think he will, is Booch, Thomas, and Neighbors as your top line, Kyrou with Shen and Dylan Holloway, and then Brandon Saad dropping to a third line and having Radek Foxa and Alexander Texier on that third line. I think that's your best option, top 9, unless a rookie steals a spot, because now you're talking about Saad, who's going to score you 25 goals, playing on a third line, and you've got a legit top line, and Kyrou doesn't need the pressure of being a top line player.
The other thing that does is it helps you with Kyrou. Yeah. Because now Kyrou gets away from those really difficult defensive matchups where he's just not going to have the same success that a guy like Pavel Buchnevich would. I think it takes off a little bit of pressure from him as well to not be on that top line. He's still making $8 million. People are going to point to that. I get that. But as a second line player, you get away from the matchups. You have a little less pressure on you as well. And he did have some success last year on a line with Braden Shin as well. Yeah. And I think Braden Shin takes some of the pressure off of him of having to go to the front of the net. So if you had, whether it's Shin, Kyrou, and either Holloway or Saad, that could even be interchangeable throughout a game. Hell, if you want to put like Torpo up there at times, Texier up there at times, like just cycle through guys, see what ends up working, right? Find out who the best match is for that trio, because as Kerbs has said, it's really the pairing. And then you add in that third guy depending on what the matchups are and what's working on any given day. To me, that's it. It's Thomas with Neighbors on that top pair, quote unquote, and then Shin with Kyrou on that second pair.
And then you intertwine.
Filter things around from that. Yeah. That's what I'd like to see. I'm very skeptical of it, but we'll get our answers sooner rather than later. Hey, later today, we're going to give you a shot to score a pair of tickets to Blues and Brews. That's coming up on Friday, September 20th at the Anheuser-Busch Brewery. So stay tuned to BK and Ferrario. Stay tuned all week on 101 ESPN as we give you chances to win a pair of tickets to Blues and Brews on Friday, September 20th. We're going to have appearances by Braden Shin, Jake Neighbors, Dylan Holloway, Philip Broberg, Drew Bannister, and Blues alumni. Coming up later today, we will give you that chance to win. Coming up next, can the Cardinals learn any lessons from two clubs that took a step back payroll-wise and took a step forward in terms of who they are in the standings? We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Classic Air Care, making people comfortable since 1926. They've been doing so with my family since 2016, taking care of our old unit. But about a month ago, ours went out. We had to get a new one. We went through the process of having Classic Air Care come out and explain everything to us. And here's the thing. If you're in the market for an HVAC system, now is the time to do it, because on January 1st, there are government regulations on the refrigerant that you use on the units now compared to the ones on January 1st, and it raises the prices 15 to 20%. So now might be the perfect time, while the weather isn't blistering hot like it was about a month ago, to check out your HVAC system and see if it needs an upgrade. And you need to do so with Classic Air Care. They've got knowledgeable technicians that walk you through the entire process, incredible customer service. They're in and out in 1 day's time to get it installed for you, and it's just an awesome thing to use, plus the maintenance agreement that they have to take care of that HVAC system. So give them a call today, or you can schedule online. Just tell them Alex Ferrario sent you at Classic Air Care or ClassicAirCare.com.
Terry Hendricks here at the Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals back in action tonight. Game 2 of their 3-game set with the Cincinnati Reds. Lance Lynn will be on the mound for St. Louis. 6:45 will be first pitch tonight. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, Alex, you like the way the Padres operate, right?
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? Bleep them prospects.
How much do you think, in terms of payroll, they've spent less this year than last year? Where's their payroll at this year compared to last year? What's your guess? More, less, and by how much?
I'll say less, and I'll say, not by much, $15 million.
$85 million cheaper than it was a year ago.
Well, I guess Juan Soto.
$85 million is how much less they're spending on their team this year than what they spent 1 year ago.
That's wild, considering, they got rid of Juan Soto, but they then made a couple of other moves and brought in a couple of players.
They also got rid of their entire rotation.
Michael Wacha,
that's true.
Seth Lugo, Josh Hader's no longer
But didn't
there.
they spend money overseas as well?
A little bit, but not a
the
lot.
same that they typically do.
They
It was
basically
more
stole the
like
guys from the Cardinals.
Cardinals guys. Yeah. It was guys that you
That
would expect the
left-handed
Cardinals
reliever
to go out there and acquire. And then they made the big trade to go out and get Dylan Cease, who wasn't particularly expensive, which is why we ever talked about him as a trade candidate for the Cardinals. Their offseason moves were like, hey, if the Cardinals were an aggressive team, this is the kind of offseason that you would expect them to have. And they added it to, hey, if the Cardinals were an aggressive team and were willing to spend on players in their prime to give them $300 million contracts, this is the kind of team that they could have assembled. Now, it's worth noting the Padres have zero playoff success in their almost entire history, but certainly in the A.J. Preller era. The reason I bring this up is because earlier today, Ken Rosenthal had a good piece over on The Athletic about why the Padres this year are the most impressive roster, the most impressive team that A.J. Preller has put together. Siri, chill.
Apparently Siri doesn't like A.J. Preller either.
Not a big fan. Are they a team that you think that the Cardinals can follow in terms of the model, Alex? Because they took a step back payroll-wise and then took a step forward in terms of what they are right now in the standings. They're only 4.5 games back of the Dodgers in the National League West. Is that a model for the Cardinals, or is it just so far out from what they are that there's really nothing that they can learn from what the Padres did this year?
I'd say not under this front office because, again, A.J. Preller's mindset is bleep them picks. We talked with... why am I blanking on his name?
Tony Gwynn Jr.
Yeah, Tony Gwynn Jr., who basically said, they view this as we're going to be very aggressive on every single move that presents itself to us. And I don't think the Cardinals can be that aggressive. Their aggressiveness, yes, they went after Sonny Gray in free agency and Wilson Contreras in free agency. Those are two guys, though, that wanted to be in St. Louis. Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado basically said, you're trading me to the St. Louis Cardinals. they're not out there trading all of their players to go get and just test to see what it looks like with Juan Soto. They didn't go out there and get Dylan Cease and say, well, this guy makes us better. I just don't see them being able to follow that model because this front office believes that you have to develop within. The problem is you can't even develop within of guys like Jackson Merrill who are being effective for this team.
Do you know how many drafted and developed players are currently on the Padres 26-man roster?
Oh, this is fun. Okay, so Merrill is one. Let's see.
Drafted by
Cronenworth
the
still on that team?
Padres and
Cronenworth
developed
would be
on their
Cronenworth's one
of theirs.
26-man roster
So two.
Cronenworth was traded.
Was he?
by the Rays.
Robert Suarez one of theirs? I don't think so. All right, I'm going to go one.
I'm going to say
There's probably someone I'm forgetting. Some of their bullpen
I'm going
arms
to say
are probably
3.
there.
2.
Oh, you're
Who's the
close.
other
Right
one?
in the middle.
Alec
it's a no.
Jacob is a reliever
That's a
who was
made-up
drafted
name.
and developed by
Alec
them.
Jacob.
He's 26 years old. He has done not a ton for them. He's appeared briefly, but he's got some good strikeout stuff, but that's it. It's 2 guys. It's Jackson Merrill and then like their 7th reliever coming out of the bullpen that's been pretty good in spot duty for them this year over like 13 innings. The reason why I bring that up is because like you could not have 2 more opposite approaches of how to construct a roster in Major League Baseball from what the Padres are doing versus what the Cardinals have done under this, really, not even just under Mo, under this ownership group, what they have become. And so, like, to answer my own question, what can the Cardinals follow this model? Nah, man. Not under this ownership group. There's no chance that they go down this path.
I
think
look more at
T-Bone
the
brought up the
Pirates.
team that is more like what the Cardinals are in the Minnesota Twins. Because the Padres are getting a lot of notoriety, and deservedly so, for being aggressive and for finally having a team that I wouldn't be surprised if they win the World Series this year. I don't think it should shock anybody if that ends up happening. They've got that kind of a roster construction right now. The Twins are the team that took a step back last offseason in terms of their payroll that I do think maybe the Cardinals could emulate. T-Bone, what did you see about them that made you interested in their story, their path, their plan?
Yeah, I go back to when they played the Minnesota Twins and digging back into it because I remember they had all the talk around them was, hey, they had payroll limitations at the deadline, and they also, Cardinals too, and they had payroll limitations in the offseason because of their RSN situation. Sound familiar? The Twins cut $35 million in payroll last offseason. That feels like a number that the Cardinals can get a little closer to compared to, what was it, $85 million by the San Diego Padres? I don't even know how the hell the Cardinals will get to that number, but what I read about the Minnesota Twins in their offseason is, the Pobo there was not happy about it. He wasn't happy about having to cut $35 million, but it forced him to get more creative. It forced him to kind of go down the path of, okay, what if we did kind of prospect for prospect swap? What if instead of going out there and signing a Lance Lynn or signing a Kyle Gibson to go in the rotation, now we are forced to have a Michael McGreevy, a Gordon Graceffo in our rotation because we have financial kind of liabilities or we have financial restrictions. So we have to go more with a younger roster to see if they can help us out, go more of a youth movement. They only spent $5 million this offseason, and they only signed 2 major league free agents. One was a bullpen arm who's no longer with them, and the other is Carlos Santana, who's been a really good player for them that they brought in.
On that point, we did this with the Padres. Let's do it with the Twins. How many drafted and developed players do you think the Twins have on their roster this season? Their current
now.
I apologize. I said 28-man roster because they expanded the roster. So the current 28-man roster for the Twins, how many of them, in your opinion, was drafted and developed?
Okay,
I just pulled it up, so you go ahead. Well, but you were talking about it, so I was trying to get ahead of it.
Let's see.
You know how this works. We've worked together for how long now?
I know, but I wanted to find out. I was curious. You were taking too long.
Okay. Buxton's one of them, I think. There will be like maybe 2 rotation arms. I'll throw in like a bullpen arm. And I think one of those kids that we talked about trading for like Kepler's one. So I'll go 5.
15.
Yeah.
And in terms of the position players, it's 9 of the 14 position players, including 7 that are in basically their everyday lineup right now. Yeah. 7 of them.
And that's why I don't think they could do the Twins either, because you don't know how to develop.
But that is more likely.
Yeah.
If the Cardinals are going to get good again with its current crop of position players that they have, it has to be more in line because of the way that they build. This is not what I prefer necessarily. I like the way that the Padres build. I love the aggressiveness, man. It's super fun to watch. It's entertaining. That is the brand of baseball that I personally would subscribe to. That being said, it hasn't really worked in the postseason, so there's a lot of downside to it as well. You be super aggressive at the end. You have the same success that the Cardinals do. Does anybody really care? The Twins, however, are much less exciting. Nobody talks about them nationally. Nobody really sees them as a legitimate threat in the American League postseason, but they're pretty good. And they've done this doing the thing that the Cardinals are likely to do this offseason, which is to cut payroll, and they've got a lot of drafted and developed talent. What's different between the Cardinals and the Twins, their guys are good that they drafted and developed and put into the lineup on an everyday basis. So that's what has to happen. They need Jordan Walker to become what Royce Lewis has been for them, right? Like that's the thing. They need one of their guys to become a star and to stay healthy.
Well, and to do that, it's going to come down to making sure there's a different group of people in charge, because I just don't buy that they're going to have that success, because you have not shown me the ability to do this.
I think the thing that can potentially change with the same group of Mo and his front office is if they're willing to accept this idea of, hey, there's no need for this pressure of to win now. You know, that's what the Twins have. Like, the Twins cut $35 million in payroll, and they'll say all the right things of, oh, we still think we can win. Let's be honest, the Twins front office is shocked they're still in this race.
I think the Brewers front office is shocked that they are what they are. Like, I think it was a similar kind of offseason for both teams.
They operate on the, we're saying we're winning, but again, read their actions, and their actions were, okay, we're going to be patient with everybody. We're going to let the young arms, we're going to let these guys, we're going to throw them in our rotation, and let's see what it looks like. Sink or swim, they're going to be there, and they're going to learn on the job. It's what the Brewers did with Jackson Chourio. Jackson Chourio probably should have been optioned right around the same time Jordan Walker did. But the Brewers said there's no pressure to win here. Let's just keep him up here. Plus, we've got other guys that we're producing. That is another factor in that around him. Let's just have him stay up here. He's either going to sink or swim at the big league level this year, and we'll go from there. And you know what? He was able to figure it out. I think that's the thing that they can learn from the Twins, is not only kind of holding on to their prospects, having them develop with them, is, okay, there's not as much pressure here. You know, we're kind of admitting this is a retool on the fly kind of thing. This is a development year, if you will. There is no pressure. There is no need to worry, Jordan Walker, if you're going to be enjoying Memphis barbecue or St. Louis barbecue. You're going to be up here with the St. Louis team.
Going to Springfield barbecue?
No. I've been to Springfield. There was not much barbecue worthwhile there.
Never mind.
What, man?
I was going to say there's a joke that I could bring up here, but it's not worth it.
No, I want to hear it.
He's Tanner. That's Alex. I'm PK. Coming up next,
man.
Let's dive into the junk drawer here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So, Alex, we just finished a show on Netflix. It's called The Perfect Couple. It's about this, like, super wealthy family, and it's a murder mystery.
So it's a documentary about you and Kara.
Come on, man. God, unbelievable.
You just said super wealthy, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Buying everybody
No,
beer
they
in
live
Belmont
in
Village.
Nantucket over the summer at their summer home, which is like millions of dollars. So not
great to have.
quite the same lifestyle that
But
my
you have
wife
a summer home. You guys go to Orlando all the time as your summer home.
Yeah, no, I do not go to Orlando in the summer. I go to Orlando in January. So.
You go the smart time of year?
Yeah, you know I'm too soft for that. Anyways, the reason I bring this up is A, I think it's well worth everybody's time. It's a fun show. It's called the Perfect Couple over on Netflix. But B, there's a report that recently came out. This comes from CBS News, Alex, on how often millionaires will consider themselves to be wealthy. So only a third of American millionaires, according to a recent survey that was taken, with those that have at least $1 million in assets, consider themselves to be, quote unquote, wealthy. 2/3 of millionaires might not feel rich, but preparedness with the general population and others, it makes them feel a greater sense of financial clarity over their spending decisions. Alex, if you are a millionaire, do you consider that to be wealthy?
Oh, I would, absolutely. I would consider wealthy to where I never have to worry about, like, my next month's financial plan. Like, I mean, we go month by month. That's how we plot out our schedule. I would consider myself wealthy if I didn't have to worry about finances. I could understand how millionaires are like, well, yeah, I'm not wealthy because you're spending it so much. And it's like, well, I'm not bringing in the same amount. Like, millionaires probably spend the same amount of money we do. And then they're like, yeah, but we could throw a little extra 100,000 here and there.
Yeah, if I were a millionaire, I would consider myself wealthy. If I can, just go and get groceries and not say, boy, I wonder how this impacts this month. Yeah.
Dude,
actually, if I don't know the price of groceries, it probably means I'm pretty good.
When I actually had full health benefits in 2019 when I got my job here, I felt wealthy.
I feel like if you're a millionaire, you consider yourself rich. If you're a billionaire, you consider yourself wealthy.
Aren't those the same thing?
I feel like
No.
if you're a millionaire, you consider yourself comfortable.
Oh,
Like in a millionaire's mindset, you consider yourself comfortable.
I am very much not a millionaire. Let's make that very clear on this show.
Prove it!
Yeah, I bet he's not going to Mexico.
I would consider myself to be
Open up your
comfortable.
books.
I would
Open up your
consider
books.
myself to
Mo.
be comfortable. I also live in a ranch-style home in St. Charles by May Street.
How beautiful.
That's
area.
beautiful. That's expensive.
It's fine. We live within our means, and I'm comfortable. If I was a millionaire, I think I would be much more than comfortable. Those trips that you say I take every year to Orlando for Disney World, I would be taking far more of those trips, and they would be to far more lavish places than going to Disney World.
I think the real question is, if you were a millionaire, how much of your lifestyle would change?
a lot.
Because Katie and I have talked about that.
I'd go on more trips.
I would still work, though.
I would too. And she said the same thing, but she said I would work with a lighter schedule than what I have. But her and I were like, I don't need a mansion because I feel like everybody's first thought is, oh, I'd go out there and buy an expensive house immediately. Man, I already hate cleaning my house now. I don't need a bigger house. Now, maybe you can afford to have somebody clean it for you. I don't know if that side of it would change, but it would definitely change in terms of the ability to do things that now you second guessed, where it's like, no, I don't know if we could do that.
Somebody on the text line wrote this in from the 314. They said, I forgot who said it on ESPN back in the day, but they said Shaq is rich. The guy who writes Shaq a check is wealthy. That's the way that I would do it. It's like the billionaires that own your sports teams, those guys are wealthy. It takes generations to run out of their money without continuing to work. Like generations would have to be filtered through before their money would run out.
Yeah,
Family
it's a baseball
money.
team. Come on, they're poor.
We have seen countless stories of athletes that were millionaires, that had millions of dollars that were invested into their skill set, justifiably so, they earned that have gone broke because they were rich. They had money that they could blow, but they could blow it. There does come a point in time, and it's not as hard as it probably seems like to us who don't have an understanding of what it means to have that kind of money. Those guys are rich, right? I think that's a really good way of describing it. $1 million in assets, though, I would describe that as being rich, even though I don't think that I do think that it's probably fair to say not necessarily wealthy.
Yeah, well, and
I would take either.
For how expensive everything is, I'm sure millionaires probably, if you're a millionaire, you're thinking it's like, yeah, but I still have to make sure you're not considered wealthy if you're still saying I would still work. Because when you're wealthy, it's like, no, I'm not working anymore.
You got people that are working for you to bring in the dough.
Yeah, I was going to say, you find ways to just continuously bring in money that you don't have to work.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Like if you're rich, you're still like, I would still keep a job. It's just you're a little bit more
just
fluid.
the lifestyle changes a little bit. Living.
Would you guys
trips.
work if you were wealthy?
Oh, no.
No chance.
If you're talking wealthy, like family money, hell no.
I would like to think I would. I would just get too bored.
I'd be a social media influencer.
I would find other stuff. Social media influencer. I like it.
Be a
I think I
restaurant
would do
critic.
something that is as like a passion project. Like instead of coming to the station every day from 11 to 2 to do our show, I'd probably just do something like on YouTube on my own terms, right? And it would probably be terrible because I would lose all like perspective of anything and like what hard work means and all of that different things. I get all of that, but
I'm not doing any of that. If I'm wealthy, nope.
I think the hardest thing would be
whitey tidies every day.
as a parent being wealthy where your kids know they don't truly have to work a day in their lives. That has to be unbelievably difficult.
And that's why I'm glad I'm not there. Like I don't have that option in front of me because then it feels like it would be a trickle-down effect where life would get harder.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get into more likely to happen. You guys give us a couple of scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely. But next, speaking of wealth, baseball has a lot of wealth right now when it comes to their RSN deals. Unfortunately, it might be going away. They might just be rich with their next TV deals.
Shoot.
What does that mean for the league? What does that mean for the Cardinals? We'll talk about the latest with the RSNs next year on 101 ESPN. All right, so there was an update on the RSN, and for those not familiar, that's the regional sports networks across Major League Baseball yesterday from Rob Manfred. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Now, this came at the CNBC Game Plan event, and Rob Manfred was asked about the RSN deals, and he said, according to Alex Sherman on Twitter, that, quote, baseball needs a national media rights strategy, and they need to move away from regional sports networks to expand their game. He then continued saying that there should be some local element, but the league has to adjust, end quote. Guys, we have now been, 2 years into this thing where there is legitimate uncertainty with what the future holds for many, maybe even most, of the league's regional sports networks. And there still seems to be no clear or coherent plan in place in terms of what they're going to do about it. Like, at this point, Manfred should probably have an idea of what the next step looks like. Even if it doesn't end up working out. Even if the RSN deals all end up accruing this year, everybody gets all of their money, Diamond Sports comes out of bankruptcy, and the deal, the plan is, hey, for 2025 at least, baseball teams will continue to be on Diamond Sports. They're getting all of their money. Even if that were to be the case, which I'm not sure that's true, Manfred needs to know at some point soon, probably like 6 months ago, this is what we're going to do if and when that's no longer the case. Because let's go. That's not here right now, Alex. And his idea of becoming more of a national media rights strategy seems laughable to me for this sport.
So put this into context for me a little bit, because when I read that tweet, I was thinking like, okay, are they talking like NFL red zone style, or are they talking like the NFL package to where you pick what game you want to watch?
So my guess, this is purely a guess and an assumption on my part, but my assumption is they're talking more in line with what MLS has, which is we enter a media rights deal that is more national in nature with Apple TV or Amazon or whomever, right? Like one of those direct-to-consumer streaming platforms. And within their platform, we have the MLB app, right? MLB TV, essentially, is what this would be.
Right.
Yeah.
And then fans can then go in and say, kind of like Sunday Ticket, on any given night, I want to watch the Cardinals versus the Cubs or the Padres versus the Dodgers. And you can, from any location with zero blackout restrictions, watch those games. In theory, really good plan, man. Like, I could see how that would work. I think there are a lot of fans that would love for that to be the strategy. And it's basically what you have now, but with no blackout restrictions in your own local market. So I can watch the Cardinals while also watching every other team in Major League Baseball.
That's the idea of trying to go younger if you're Major League Baseball.
Sure. The part that I don't like about this is exclusively going in that direction. Getting away from RSNs entirely is a really bold strategy for a league that skews to an older audience and for a league that wants to continue to build that audience. I don't think this is the direction to go. MLS can make this kind of a risk because it's a growing sport that is hoping to capture the specific audience that would be most likely to watch via streaming platforms. I am very concerned if this is the direction that Major League Baseball is going. It's obviously early on, but I'm also a little concerned that they don't have more of a firm media strategy when they know at some point in the next year or two, they're likely to have to make that switch to something that is a lot of uncertainty.
Well, and the question that I would have is, who's paying for this? Like, how are teams profiting off of this if you're going one national media outlet? Because it doesn't seem like that's viable to where every single team is benefiting financially like the RSN deals are.
So that's the other thing. There are $2 billion in total.
Right.
Think about this for a second. $2 billion in local RSN deals. This does not include Sunday Night Baseball or any of the other national packages. It's just from Bally Sports to the Cardinals, or from SNY to the New York Yankees, or Marquee to the Cubs. Like, all of those deals combined are worth more than $2 billion. Can you guys tell me which streaming outlet is going to be deciding, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and hand over a $2 billion blank check to Major League Baseball so that way we have access to every single baseball game throughout the Major League season? Is there anybody doing that? Who's the entity that just said $2 billion, great investment that we're going to put into baseball right now?
Especially after watching the downfall of the RSN with baseball and how that's all going about. I don't think somebody's willing to spend money.
And now imagine how many subscribers you would need in order to cover that cost. of $2 billion going towards Major League Baseball. Between the subscribers and the advertisers, it's going to be hard to make that up. And just to make ends meet, this is the problem with RSNs. Like, the whole model has now gotten to a place where it's going to be difficult to survive. And beyond any of that, logistically, it's a nightmare. Because all of these contracts have different end dates. And, like, the Yankees aren't in the same situation right now that the Cardinals are in. They're not dealing with this Diamond Sports issue.
Cubs may not even want to get involved in it because they have their own marquee app.
Look at what the Dodgers have right now. I'm not opting out of that deal. It's great for the Dodgers right now. And until their company goes belly up, I'm going to stick along with this as long as we can. Let's ride this gravy train to the end. And so if the Yankees, the Cubs, and the Dodgers decide we're not going to this Major League Baseball thing, well, then your three of your biggest teams in the sport have opted out. And so are they now sharing their revenues from their TV rights deals with the other 27 teams in Major League Baseball? I would think not. I'm guessing those owners aren't going to be super thrilled about that notion, because now you're subsidizing other teams that are less valuable than yours, which is like the opposite of the way that Major League Baseball does business in general. There's a lot going on here, man. And the Cardinals are one of the teams potentially most affected by it, especially when yesterday the NBA's commissioner, Adam Silver, came out and said that his teams have accepted significantly lower rights fees this season from Diamond Sports as well, to make sure that they have access to Diamond Sports and Bally Sports throughout the league this year as well. So I would have imagined that if I'm a Cardinals in the Cardinals ownership or the business side of the operations, I'm anticipating not getting my full rights deal next year. And that will almost certainly affect the way that they go into this offseason with some of their decisions.
I was going to say, you hear that right now, T-Bone? Just those prices getting slashed right now.
I thought that was the money they're putting on the roster because now they need more people to go to the ballpark. Oh.
All right.
Same thing.
So now let's get to the baseball aspect of this, because yesterday I was listening to the Fast Lane. And I promise you, this is not me calling out Jamie Rivers, because I love Jamie Rivers, and it was more of a throwaway comment than it was anything else. But he did say something that I found really interesting. And the reason why I found it interesting is it's the type of thing that I could see the Cardinals doing, but I would absolutely hate them going to this particular route. Take a listen.
I do not think you can hang on to Miles Mikolas. And we had a good suggestion on the text line. Somebody said, package Helsley with Mikolas and send them somewhere, get something in return. Just take my garbage, I'll give you something good alongside of it. Because as much as Helsley's been great for this team, like, you may not be in a situation where you're saving a whole lot of games.
I agree with the sentiment of trading Helsley to get something significant in return, because if the team's not going to be very good next year, there's not going to be a lot of save situations, and closers, relievers in general, are the most replaceable position in the sport. All of that we can have a real conversation about whether or not it's a smart move for the Cardinals to trade Ryan Helsley in the offseason. Attaching a bad contract like Miles Mikolas to him to get less in return just to move off of the money of Miles Mikolas, that is the part of this that I just find totally unacceptable. And if they did that over this offseason, it would be the first sign of this team still not getting it, Alex. Mm-hmm. That would be a move to me that is a disaster waiting to happen.
I'm with you. Ryan Helsley should not be attached to anything to get rid of your roster. If Ryan Helsley is not on the Cardinals next season, it should be going to get you more assets to make you better down the road. That's the crown jewel of what you have right now in your system that you could realistically acquire to put you in a better position. T-Bone talked about being the Minnesota Twins. You know how you can try to be the Minnesota Twins? Go make a trade for a top prospect on another team by sending away Ryan Helsley. If you want to move Miles Mikolas or some of these bad contracts, because I get what Jamie's saying, like, that's what a lot of hockey teams do. Hockey teams get rid of bad contracts by putting first-round draft picks attached to them or putting prospects attached to them. If you want to go into your system and find somebody, and I'm just going to throw a name out there, hypothetically, if you want to move on from Miles Mikolas and say, we need to get rid of him, let's put Ivan Herrera with him. He's not a part of the team.
No.
I'm with you, but the only way you're going to be able to move a Miles Mikolas is
to eat the money.
Maybe. I'm not trading any asset that is a prospect with them.
You're in need of assets, not in need of moving the money. This team, this offseason, if you need to move Miles Mikolas, it's 1 year, by the way. If this was a 5-year deal, okay, we can have that conversation, because 5 years from now, like, over the next 5 years, what's the opportunity cost of A, that roster spot, and B, not having that money on your books? Fair. 1 year at $17 million? Mikolas still has some value to somebody. I don't know what the specific dollar figure is that they would attach to it, but at $7, $8, $9 million, there's a team that would take him on. So eat the other $7, $8, $9 million, trade him to a team for future considerations, and boom, you're good to go. I am absolutely not trading an asset along with Miles Michaelis. If I'm trading assets, I'm using those assets to get something. Avon Herrera is your chip to go get you a stud hitter or a stud pitcher. Him, JC, like all of these dudes that are potentially at surplus positions, Gorman, etc. You cannot use them to sweeten the pot for somebody else to take on your bad contracts that you're trying to remove from the books. Either keep that contract on the books and just eat it next year, or spend money along with them and send the money to another team to be able to take that on. That's the way you do that. You cannot send assets with them.
I don't think they have a contract on the books that I look at and say, okay, they need to send something with it to sweeten the pot to get it off their books. Maybe the Arenado deal, but Arenado controls so much of that in terms of with the no trade clauses. I don't think they have that contract. Because to your point, Michaelis, a 1-year deal. Matt's, I think, is a 1-year deal next year, if I'm not mistaken, essentially.
Correct.
And it's not a ton of money. Same with like Eric Fetty. Eric Fetty's not a ton of money. Somebody could bring him in. They don't have that contract that you look at and go, crap, we've got the Patrick Corbin on our roster.
Exactly.
And that's why the Nationals were talking about, do we package him with Juan Soto at the time? It was, we've got like 3 more years, 4 more years. It's the opportunity cost of, okay, well, if we can get rid of him, we also now have a spot in our rotation, and we can just save some money by doing it. And even if you trade Juan Soto with a bad contract, maybe you don't get the James Wood, the
Exactly.
C.J. Abrams, the, who's the other one? Mackenzie Gore. But you probably get 2 of those 3. And you're still getting a really good return in that. There's no
But they
need to
did
do
it
that
right.
for these guys.
They ultimately got it
Exactly.
right and said, you know what, we're not going to include the bad contracts that we have to get out of here. We're just going to go ahead and trade Juan Soto and make a clean break. And they got it right. And now they still have Patrick Corbin, who still stinks. He's still terrible for them, but they're still not good. And so it's not actually affecting them in any meaningful way. They just are eating the contract, and they're letting these young guys get the experience that they need. That should be the Cardinals' plan this offseason. Not necessarily to keep Miles Michaelis, but to not attach another bad contract with a good player. I would have been okay with the Blues doing that because they have a surplus of prospects and they're in a different
longer
place
contracts.
and they're longer contracts for a guy like Torrey Krug. You can't do that if you're in the Cardinals' current situation. All right, coming up in 15 minutes, speaking of the Blues, we're going to talk to Chris Kerber. He's the voice of the Blues, and we're going to give you a chance to score a pair of tickets to Blues and Brews on Friday, September 20th, so stay tuned for that. But coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us 2 scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely to happen here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you which one is more likely here on 101 ESPN. All right, Alex, let's start out with this one. More likely to pull off an upset this week in the NFL. The Chicago Bears, who are going on the road to take on your beloved Houston Texans, or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who surprised this week with a big-time offensive performance, who are traveling to Detroit to take on the Lions. More likely upset, the Bears over the Texans or the Bucs over the Lions this weekend.
I don't think either of these teams pull off an upset, but more likely it's Tampa Bay because of the quarterback. I'm not bought into Caleb Williams. I think he looked very skittish when he got under duress, and I could promise you that the Houston Texans are going to be bringing everything at him consistently, and he can't make the same type of play under pressure that Anthony Richardson was able to make. So I'll say it's at least Baker Mayfield finding a way to keep that game close, or at least the defense for Tampa keeping it close.
Yeah, I think I would go with Baker as well, just because, though I don't think he's a great quarterback, I've seen he can fit right there in the middle of the pack, like 15th, as the 15th best quarterback in the league, and you can win with that guy. Caleb Williams, you can tell, is going to go through some learning curves this season. He's got to learn to not run backwards when they're about to hit him. Fine, I would say more likely it'd be Mayfield in the Bucs.
Could be worse. You could be Bryce Young.
Wow.
Remember, I looked up yesterday because I was curious. I was like, who did I have? I ended up my final rankings for the draft that year. I feel good about this one.
I remember, buddy.
Stroud 1, Richardson 2, Bryce Young 3. I feel good about that. I've been wrong about everything.
Where'd you have Bryce Young?
T-Bone saw a fellow short king and said that guy could be an NFL starter.
Yeah.
And just like T-Bone sees Ryan Helsley throw 100 miles an hour and says, I could hit that.
I could hit that.
God, it's so ridiculous that you continue to say this. When you look back at that Bryce Young thing, there are so many lessons to be learned from it. Where it's like, hold on. He's 5'10", like a $190 soaking wet. Doesn't really have a cannon of an arm. Not overly athletic. Just kind of okay at everything. We're taking this guy #1 overall over C.J. Stroud, who threw like 50 touchdown passes and like 2 interceptions, and over Anthony Richardson, who's 6'5", 240 pounds, and was literally ranked the most athletic quarterback that we've ever seen at the position at the NFL Combine. Why? Why are we doing this again? And then the Panthers were like, yeah, not only are we doing that, we're trading everything. All in on that guy.
Don't trust Alabama quarterbacks.
Certainly not those that don't have like the physical attributes to show you they can translate to the NFL. Because it used to be don't trust Ohio State quarterbacks as well, but then you saw one and you're like, this looks different than all of the other guys. Hopefully it works this time.
I'm just saying, Bryce Young, Mac Jones, Tua has not been pretty. Jalen Hurts was good, but he said, I got to get out of Alabama.
Bryce is the worst of all of those guys that you just mentioned.
Oh, I know. Well,
Tua's been fine. Like he's fine.
Would you say
been pretty good.
Bryce is worse than Mac? Because Mac in about 3 years was a backup.
Mac had moments. I have not seen a single moment from Bryce Young where I'm like, that's usable.
You didn't see him run into the end zone on Sunday?
He's bad.
He said, I'm going to do this myself.
He scored a touchdown last Sunday?
To answer my own question, I think it's the Bears. They've got a defense.
The Bears.
They've got a defense, man. That defense is really good.
Yeah, not a defense that can stop.
I feel bad because I think Matt Eberflus is going to get fired at the end of the year, and they're going to be like, we need an offensive mind to help Caleb Williams.
I'm really worried about their OC. I don't know that their OC has the chops to make it work with the Bears, but I think their defense is really good. I don't know that they're going to do it. I would pick the Texans, obviously, straight up against the Bears, but it's a 6-point spread. I think they could, if their defense comes up with a couple of key plays, kind of similar to last week, I think they could do it. All right, Alex, what do you got?
Guys, more likely to happen following this weekend's prospect tournament, we feel better or worse about Dalibor Dvorsky making the NHL roster?
I think better. I'm still really high on Dalibor Dvorsky.
He's going up against what a lot of people view as top 5 and top 10 prospect pools in the NHL.
Good.
Going up against Chicago. Now, Chicago's guy that they just drafted won't be there. And then Minnesota, that's got a lot of dudes. Going up against those two teams. If Dvorsky comes out on top of that prospect tournament looking like the best player on the ice, you better feel confident about him, at least getting a shot at that spot.
Yeah, I think you'd leave more likely feeling more confident. Just because, like, the worst case scenario is he looks outmatched at that and then he really panics, and I can't see that. I mean, I watched him with, it's a different scenario because it's different teams that he'll be going up against, but we were there. We watched him at Prospects Camp. He stood out. Why? Because he's different, you know? And now maybe that doesn't end up translating to being a superstar, but you can tell he just was different from what the St. Louis Blues had in their prospects.
T-Bone, what do you got?
Guys, which team is more likely at this point in week 1 to miss the playoffs? The Atlanta Falcons or the Cincinnati Bengals?
More likely to miss the postseason entirely? Yeah. I would probably go with the Bengals just because the AFC is better. And I have serious questions. We all had serious questions about the defense going into the season. And now T. Higgins is hurt. He's not practicing again today. So my expectation, he's gonna be out this week against the Chiefs. That's not an easy way to start the year with losing to the New England Patriots and then going on the road against the Chiefs this weekend. Good luck. And you're in a really difficult division. Your quarterback didn't look right this past weekend. He's not pushing the ball down the field. I think eventually they'll probably get this thing figured out, but it might be too little too late. So I'll say the Bengals are the one that's more likely to miss the playoffs just because of the surrounding AFC.
I actually think the Falcons, mostly because I've been impressed with some other teams that I did not expect to be any good in the NFC. Now, that could fall flat on its face pretty quickly. Like, I was impressed by what the Cardinals had to offer. I know they lost that game, but that looked like at least a competent team. I was impressed by the Vikings, which that could fall flat on your face. I think the Falcons might have more issues than we originally thought just because they are that, quote, fantasy football team that has no ability to create offense. And, like, the Bengals, as much as I doubt them, and I have said it all offseason, like, the bad vibes coming from that team are super bad. I also know that, like, Joe Burrow turns it on in, like, the final, like, 8 games of the season to go on a run. So I'll say the Falcons.
Yeah, I kind of lean towards the Falcons as well because I think for the Bengals, it made all the sense in the world why they struggled last week. Jamar Chase hadn't practiced really at all, so he just shows up and is playing. They're without T. Higgins. So Joe Burrow hasn't gotten a chance to work with those guys. It's a weird offseason vibe. Maybe that gets worked out in the next 4 weeks. What I don't understand was the Falcons. There was no, like, weird vibes outside of, hey, Penix is here. I didn't understand how they looked so bad. And I get it. The Steelers have a good defense. They shouldn't have dominated the Atlanta Falcons like they did. And that's why I'm a little bit more worried. I do agree with what you said, though. It does help that they are in the NFC South. They should probably still win that division. I just still think I still have too much faith that the Bengals have too much talent that they can overcome all their issues.
Yeah, I've been low on them enough to where, like, it makes me nervous to bet against them because they always end up figuring out by, like, week 8, winning 10 games, getting into the playoffs, and by the time they're in the postseason, we're like, oh, that's a team nobody wants to play because they're the only team that can make Mahomes lose. But, man, it does not feel good right now, that's for sure. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll get to a couple of these from the text line for more likely to happen before we get to Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues, and your chance to score a pair of tickets to Blues and Brews coming up in the next segment. More likely to happen, Mizzou loses to Boston College, or Mizzou gives up 0 points again, this time against Boston College. Mizzou gets a shutout or they lose. Which one is more likely this weekend?
I'll say Mizzou loses because I would love to know the last time a college football team went 3-0 with 3 straight shutouts to start the season. I know 2019.
I don't have that research for you.
You'll find it, buddy. I know you will. I trust you. But I'll say it's more likely that they lose because Boston College has looked good in their first 2 games.
Yeah, I'll say more likely they lose. I don't necessarily believe that. But
I don't either.
It's so hard to get a shutout. Not only 3 games in a row against a, like, Power 4 conference
and a ranked opponent.
You know, them shutting out Buffalo, them shutting out Murray State. Wasn't all. I mean, it was a little surprising because we didn't know what to expect from the defense as we had a year ago. But, yeah, I can see how a team like Missouri, who's top 10 in the country, would shut out those opponents.
All right, I agree. I think it's good.
Say it. Say it.
More likely to lose.
Say
Yeah.
it. Clip that and send it to Drink.
And it's really hard to go 3 straight games, 0 points allowed. And this is a competent offense. Like, it's a competent, not just for, like, what Mizzou's gone up against comparatively speaking, but for a Power 4 team. Boston College has a really good head coach. Bill O'Brien's a really good college coach, man. And they've got some talent on that side of the ball. So Mizzou's going to give up a touchdown at some point this year. I guess it'll happen this weekend. More likely to score or to win 10 games this year, the Jets or the Patriots? We all agree it's the Jets, right?
Wait, to win what?
10 games.
The Patriots, man.
No, the Jets.
The Patriots got that new head coach vibe.
That question unlocked me so much, I thought I had to have heard that wrong.
Yeah, all right, final one here, hockey related. More likely to happen. Falk is on the 3rd pair defensively by the end of the year, or Broberg is on the top pair defensively by the end of the year?
Broberg's on the top pair. I don't see a spot where Falk drops down to the 3rd pair because I don't. As much as I like Matt Kessel, I don't think Matt Kessel has that type of offensive upside that Falk does. Broberg can outplay Nick Leddy. I mean, people have said he's got top pair potential, so I'll say that.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I can actually see a scenario where Falk's on the 3rd pair. I'll go more likely Broberg will be with Parayko, though. I could see where they see the upside and they say, you know what, Nick Leddy, it's been fun there. He probably is better off more as a 2nd or 3rd pairing guy. And I have a tough time seeing them do bumping a veteran, though. That's something they've struggled with in the past with those guys. So I'll say more likely Broberg's top pair.
I think Falk will be a third pair defenseman by the end of the year, and I think Broberg will be a top pair defenseman by the end of the year.
That's
That's not how this game goes,
I think
man.
it's more likely, though, that Broberg is that, because I think by the end of the season, this team, I'm sorry, guys, I'm still excited. I think they probably will not be making the playoffs, and I think by the end of the year, you will have Broberg getting top pair defenseman minutes, because this is a team that understands there's value in having your young guys getting opportunities down the stretch in a lost season.
You take that out of your mouth.
I'm excited about the St. Louis Blues.
Also yell that at my daughter sometimes. Puts markers in her mouth.
My son now thinks it's very funny at the end of the night. It's only the end of the night, right before he's going to bed, where he's got his jammies on, he's running around playing, right, getting all the giggles out.
And he pees all over it?
No, we've been doing that lately, though, where
Wait, you've been what? Wait, what?
he starts running around and, they're trying to let it loose, right? Your diaper rash or whatever. And he's like, oh, here we go.
Watch this.
This is so funny. I'm like, no, it's not funny. That's a rug.
That's my wall. Please stop. Please.
Yeah,
please.
so he's now starting to run around, and then he'll go, his dog has, she just plays with tennis balls mostly, or chew toys, right? So he goes over to her little box. She's got everything in, and he'll pick one up. And he'll start putting it to his mouth, but not all the way until you're looking at him and you really have your attention on him. And then he goes, and then he starts chewing on it. You're like, come on, dude.
Man.
And then he just thinks it's the funniest thing ever.
Let me just tell you, it gets worse from there. Then they just stare at you while you say don't do something and like, wash me.
Yesterday, Luca grabbed his mom. She got a new Alexa, right? His little ball thing.
Oh, tell me he grunk spiked it.
Kind of.
Yes.
So he grabbed it. She has it over by her seat on the couch. She works from home. She's got it there. He grabs it, and he's got this mini basketball hoop that we got him, the Little Tykes basketball hoop, and he's learning how to he grabs the ball,
Slam
puts
dunk.
it over, and then slam dunks it, right? Well, instead of using the basketball for that, he decided, I'm going to use this Alexa.
Genius.
He grabs it, picks it up, he goes, whoop.
If you don't have that kid in Jason Tatum's basketball camp ASAP, we've got issues.
Oh, he's going to be 5'3", but he's going to dunk on a 4-foot hoop. All right, he's
T-bone.
Alex. It's T-Bone on BK.
Hey,
Coming up
Top of
next, Chris
talent.
Kerber, voice of the Blues here on 101 ESPN.
You know, when you're in the service industry, the single most important thing for your business, once you provided the service, is that people will tell other people about how good the service was. And for Classic Air Care, that is something they take a lot of pride in. How about this review from Linda? Was able to fix our older AC unit in one visit. Very good service. Technician was very professional. The company also installed a new furnace a few years ago for us. Great service. Came and installed a new furnace in the middle of the winter when it went out. They were able to put in a new furnace within a few hours. Great service, reasonable cost compared to other quotes we got. Highly recommend Classic Air. That's Linda that used Classic Air twice. Use Classic Air for your home, whether it be the air conditioner unit for the rest of the summer. Maybe you want to make sure that the furnace is going to be ready for the late fall and the early winter. Call Classic Air Care. Have them come out. Have them service the unit. If you need repairs, if you need a new unit, now is the time to do it, as costs will go up because of government regulations after the turn of the year. And you can see more quotes from Linda at ClassicAirCare.com. Book your appointment online. You know the quality of the company that's coming in to help you make your house comfortable. They've been keeping people comfortable since 1926. It's Classic Air Care.
Terry Harris here at the Sports Center update, brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Cardinals fell to the Reds last night 3-0. They'll be back in action tonight. Game 2 of their 3-game set with Cincinnati. 6:45 will be first pitch as Lance Lynn will be on the mound for St. Louis. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Curb, somebody dared me to ask you about Shannon Sharp's Instagram account. I'm not going to do that. Do not look that up. It's not something that's worthwhile for anybody right now. Certainly don't do it if you're at work.
Don't do it at work like BK just did.
But we are going to be talking to Chris. That's what it sounded like. We're going to be talking to Chris Kerber about the St. Louis Blues. By the way, they have the Blues and Brews coming up on September 20th, and we're going to give you a chance to score a pair of tickets to that coming up at the end of this segment. Curbs, appreciate the time as always, man. How you doing today?
Fellas, I'm good. I can promise you it hasn't even hit my radar pretty much ever in my life to look up Shannon Sharp's account.
Wouldn't do it right now. I'll tell you that much.
It's worse than Paul Pierce when he went live, so.
I don't know about worse.
Oh, it's so worse.
It's close enough that it's uncomfortable. That's certainly.
Well, BK listens to it 17 times during a commercial.
I was accidentally listening to it while Curbs was on the line, and I definitely thought it went over. I was like, oh boy, that's something I'm gonna have to explain later. All right, Curbs, let's talk a little bit of hockey.
I'll look it up.
Don't do that. Certainly not in front of the kids. So. Earlier today, Curbs, Jeremy Rutherford had a really good piece over in The Athletic, a Q&A that he did with Robert Thomas. And one of the questions that Alex and I both found really interesting about it is he was asked, if you had your ideal line mates of guys that are not currently on the St. Louis Blues, who would be your wingers? And he said, I would go with the Kachucks, but he also threw in there, who was the other? Zach Hyman was the other name that he brought up.
He was the first one.
And when you think about this, Curbs, those guys are all physical, like net front presence types of guys that can be on a line with a Robert Thomas. Does that give you any insight into the style of player that Robert Thomas likes to play alongside?
Yeah, it sounds to me like he likes to play alongside somebody like Jake Neighbors. Yeah, well, if you think about Robert's game as a centerman and how it's developed. Think of, who he was learning from his rookie year in the National Hockey League playing with Bozak and Maroon en route to a Stanley Cup. And maybe the single most important goal in the history of this franchise in that double overtime Game 7 goal. To me, he's a playmaker. he has yet to play in the National Hockey League with a true goal scorer, a sniper, and so somebody that has the ability to get to the front of the net, that has some good hands, that has the ability to knock it in. We've seen Robert shoot more over the last couple years. You know that there's a 30-goal scorer in him with the way he can shoot the puck. And the fact that somebody will be in the front of the net on a regular basis is going to pick up some pretty good candy there to get him some helpers in the miss. That's going to be critical for Robert Thomas to be that 90 to 100-point player that I truly believe he has there. And you're seeing the maturity of the man growing into it on fatherhood and all that other stuff. But that maturity eventually comes through on the ice. And when it hits, guys, it's like the game for these veterans just starts to slow down and then, holy cow, look out. But you're right. It does speak volumes when it tells you the kind of player. You got to be physical. You got to go into the corner to help get the puck. You've got to be able to hold on to the puck. And will you go to the tough areas? Because if you do, he's going to find you. And it's something that Joey Vitale has talked about for a while. You have to expect a pass from Robert Thomas to come to your tape even when you don't think he has a lane, because he'll find you.
So, Kerbs, that's what you said with Thomas and 100 points is what I brought up. I feel like the best shot for Robert Thomas this season to get to 100 points is playing with both Pavel Buchnevich and Jake Neighbors. True or false?
Well, I think he could do it with Kyrou, too. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's true and false because I think he could do it with a couple of people. I just think, though, they have to have a mindset as a group. For Robert Thomas to get to that point level and for Jordan Kyrou to get to that point level, for Jake Neighbors to potentially hit 30 goals, all those different things that we're talking about. The special teams are going to have to be good on both ends of the ice. You're going to have to be a puck possession team in the offensive zone. You're going to have to spend more time in the offensive zone than they have in the last couple of years. You cannot get to those numbers and be a rush team as heavy as they have been. You've got to, as we've talked about, you've got to transition like the Vancouver Canucks did from 2 years ago to last year. If the Blues can do that, you're going to see everybody's numbers go up because you're going to get more offensive zone time. With the offensive zone time, you'll earn more special teams. With more focus on special teams, you'll have more points in that. And that's how you get it up there. I think there's several people that Robert Thomas could achieve that with. I think he's that good.
All right, Curves, I've got a question for you. And by the way, we're talking to Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues here on 101 ESPN. Which of these four players will finish with the most ice time at center for the Blues this season? Dvorsky, Texier, Faksa, or Holloway? Out of those four players, which one gets the most ice time for the Blues this season at center?
Okay, so you said Dvorsky,
Texier, Faksa, and Holloway. Four players that did not play for the Blues a year ago that could be playing center for them at some point this year. Which of those four finishes with the most ice time at the center position specifically?
Okay, to me, I think that probably comes down to, okay, I take Dvorsky out of the mix at the moment. Well, I'm gonna go Faksa. I think you're gonna see Faksa in the penalty kill situation. I think he's the most proven of the three. Holloway, I could see getting moved to the left or the right side, depending on just what's going on in a given game, depending on the health of maybe somebody like Sundqvist as well or something like that. So I'll go Faksa, Holloway, Texier.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And the only reason I'm leaving Dvorsky out there is guys, this is a hard team to make. This is going to be, because of the changes and the additions and the veterans, it is going to be a difficult team to make. So if Dvorsky can make it, obviously you're going to see him there, but I see a young guy in and out of the lineup at times, so I got to go with one of those veteran guys.
So, Kerbs, since you mentioned being difficult to make this team, that's what we talked with Drew Bannister about on Monday at the Media Day luncheon. We talked specifically about the power play and kind of looking at different areas of guys that are going to be competing in training camp. And once again, Drew brought up Scott Perunovich in terms of the power play potential quarterback and said, like, this is the opportunity for him because he has the most experience at running a power play.
Yeah, man, I hear that. I clearly see that is the opportunity for him. They're going to give him every opportunity to take it. But then you also have to beat those other guys out 5-on-5 defensively. I don't think a team can have a power play specialist if you're not dressing 7 defensemen. And so for Scott Perunovich, it's got to come down to skating. It's got to come down to quick decisions with the puck. It's got to come down to his belief in the kind of player that he can be. It's got to come down to him staying healthy. And more importantly, if they are going to put him on the power play and give him that opportunity, he has got to shoot the puck. If the Blues do not establish a shooting mentality, on the power play from the blue line, I think the power plays are too easy to defend otherwise. And you talk to other teams, they'll tell you, no, if we don't think the guy's going to shoot it, we're not all that worried about it. We'll cover the other areas, and that extra step they take, block shots. So, I just don't know that you can play in the NHL as a power play specialist. And so Scott's all around game has to be there. And I think it's going to come down to the first and foremost thing. And I know he's got it in himself, is just to believe in himself to play that way. I think he's felt a lot of pressure. I think there's been a lot of frustration with the injuries. And if mentally he can just come out and let himself play, then you'll see what the Blues really have in him.
Hey, Kerb's excited to see this week the prospect camp that they've got going on. We're going to be broadcasting live out there tomorrow. We'll be able to take some of that in. I know we've got some opportunities for Blues fans to hear the Blues prospect games right here on 101 ESPN Friday and then Saturday night as well. So looking forward to all of that. We'll be listening to you on the calls, and we'll be seeing you out there at Centene Community Ice Center, Kerbs. Appreciate the time as always, man.
Yeah, you got it, guys. Have a good rest of your day. We'll see you in a couple of days at the rink.
See you, That's Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues, joining us as he does each and every week here on BK and Ferrario. Double dose of Chris Kerber for T-Bone and Alex this week. He joined you guys out at the luncheon earlier this week as well. Right now is your chance to score a pair of tickets to Blues and Brews Friday, September 20th at the Anheuser-Busch Brewery. Get fired up for the Blues season at this outdoor street party. It features live music, plus appearances by Braden Shin, Jake Neighbors, Dylan Holloway, Philip Broberg, Drew Bannister, and other Blues alumni. Text in right now, 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you're texter number 101, and you can tell us, which segment did T-Bone forget to play the introduction for earlier today? Which segment did T-Bone forget to play the introduction for earlier today? If you're texter number 101 with the correct answer, you are getting that pair of tickets to Blues and Brews on Friday, September 20th from us here on 101 ESPN. Coming up next, we'll see if T-Bone plays the correct introduction for the BK and Ferrario Rewind here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you, and joined now by my insurance agent, Tracy Bibb. Her and her team over at Allstate making sure that they're saving you money. And Tracy, I know whether it's Illinois or Missouri right now, they need to contact you to be making sure that they are getting the best rates for their insurance coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. In Illinois, we've got a brand new auto product with great new rates, so great time to call us for that. In Missouri, we've had at least 3 different home insurance companies that have gone up double digits, some of them almost 50%. I've got all of that listed on my Facebook page in case those are one of the companies that you have. Check it out. Give us a call. Let us see what we can do to help you with your insurance. We're also one of the only companies that does not make you do a percentage deductible. So another great reason to give us a call.
Give her a call today. Tell her you heard us talk about it here on 101 ESPN, and Tracy will walk you through the free non-committal quote. Super simple. That's 314-328-4260, 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the bib. Tracy, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Go Blues.
Hey, 101 ESPN salutes our nation's military for service members and their family, and anyone currently on base at the Scott Air Force Base. You can join the Fast Lane for their annual Military Appreciation live broadcast next Wednesday. That's September 18th from 2 to 6 o'clock. If you're on base, we hope you stop by. The Fast Lane's live broadcast will be next Wednesday, 2 to 6 o'clock, live from Scott Air Force Base. It's all brought to you by the Air Comfort Service, Heating, Cooling, and Insulation, CarStar, and by Budweiser. Alex, Cardinals back in action this evening. We don't do a whole lot of breakdowns anymore. Lance Lynn's going to be on the bump for them, though. I am kind of curious to see what it looks like and what this all means for Lynn's future here in St. Louis. Alex, who do you think gets sent down for Lance Lynn whenever they make that move official today?
It has to be a pitcher, right?
Yeah.
Probably Roycroft. Pitched yesterday. That would make the most sense because, you know, I didn't know if it was a position player that you could move on from, but because you brought one up, yeah, my guess is Roycroft. What did he do? 1 2/3 yesterday? Looked good, but
I don't know.
He'll be gone.
If I'm being honest, the game was on.
Well, that's why I was asking. What did he do?
He pitched. I would say it probably is Roycroft. He's the one that makes most sense. Like you said, he pitched yesterday. Get a quote-unquote fresh arm into your rotation. Your bullpen's playing a little short, which is not an ideal situation for Lance Lynn, who's 5 and dive. But I think that's probably the move. But, hey, the Cardinals have shocked me before, so we'll see who is the one that goes down.
I wonder if it's going to be Riley O'Brien. That's the one that I have in the back of my head where it's like, could it be that? Because Roycroft's been good again. I don't know. He's got the stuff. They both have good stuff. I think there's obvious signs that Riley O'Brien needs to hone in his command. I don't know if that's likely to happen here or at the minor league level. I don't know, man. Bringing back a veteran starter who has almost no impact whatsoever on your 2025 season and getting rid of some guys like Roycroft or like O'Brien that could help you next year doesn't make a lot of sense. But here we are in 2024. This is the way that things
when
go.
you open prepared for them to say, hey,
Palante?
We still need that bullpen arm. Palante started yesterday. He's got options.
Can't wait to talk about that
There's
tomorrow.
a better than 50% chance he goes down, I think.
BK opened up and he's like, "Ooh, I'm excited to see what Lance Lynn's got to offer." Really?
He's T-Bone, that's Alex, I'm BK. We'll certainly break it all down for you guys tomorrow and talk about other nonsense here on 101 ESPN. 999646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers.
I'm asking you the same question.
I know there's no audio over here, and I pointed. No, I gave the cue.
You know the segment?
You know what segment we're doing?
Oh, is this supposed to be question and answer?
So
Yeah.
like it's harshly on me.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Yeah.